Hey guys, this is Star What If. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see third part what if Harry Potter commanded Gryffindor's lost golden dragon. Here is short summary. When Harry hears a mysterious voice calling for the lost golden dragon of Gryffindor, he uncovers an ancient legend, and a power that could change the wizarding world forever. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. A group of goblins came forward. We are really sorry Prince Turthin, but there is an issue you need to be made aware of at once. The prince looked at him and nodded. Alex and Aiden started to walk off when they both heard something that caught their attention. They both turned back. Aiden looked at the goblin. Please repeat what you said. We caught the thief who stole an elven silver oak leaf, trying to enter the city. We stopped him and confiscated the leaf, but he and his accomplice got away. The goblin said. Alex closed his eyes, his mind imagining Severus being beaten and robbed. Aiden quickly said, "Where is the wizard that they took the leaf from?" "We do not know. He must have left him dead on the highway perhaps." Alex immediately cried out. Aiden held his shoulder. "Don't worry, we will find Severus." "So you know him?" Aiden looked at the goblin confused. "Who?" "The thief, Severus, that is his name. Severus Snape, claimed he got the leaf from the warrior princess." Alex looked at him angrily. "He did get the leaf from the warrior princess. We were in Shangri-La yesterday, she gave him the leaves." "Where is he?" Aiden asked firmly. "We don't know. He and his accomplice escaped." "His accomplice? The Phoenix? It attacked Malbro and took the confiscated leaf and helped the wizard escape," the goblin said. "Where were they last seen?" Aiden said, taking a deep breath. "Fleeing the gateway into the ruins," the goblin replied. "Wait, so he did not enter the city?" Alex asked. "No, he did not have the necessary payments to enter and tried to pay using the leaf," the goblin said. Aiden looked like he was going to breathe fire. "What payments? I told the guards at the gate he was my guest and I vouched for him. He is my grandson's father and I was assured that everything was in order. Why was he detained and why was I not informed? We were told he was a dark wizard and he had you all under a spell, and the guard at the gate said he was hostile. He had no money on him and then tried to pay with the leaf and then the Phoenix attacked." Aiden roared angrily and the goblin cowered frightfully. "He was my guest, you detained my guest." Alex called his brother in his mind. "Aiden, I think it is not their fault." Aiden looked at him. "What?" "Gideon told us Severus told him he was going to Gringotts and to buy potions ingredients. He made us believe he was in the city. But he never made it in. Gideon probably set it all up. He probably told the goblins that Severus was a dark wizard who was under a spell." Aiden looked down at the innocent-looking boy who was now sleeping in his father's arms and shook his head. He sees Severus as the evil Professor Snape. "Lord Child, do you know what mess you have caused?" Aiden looked at the goblin. "Professor Severus Snape was an honorable guest. I am sure all of this is a simple misunderstanding. We will see to the boy and then I will come and settle the matter. Turthin, you have my word that Louisa gave Severus the leaf. Maybe Alex, you should stay here and I will help you clear your husband's name," Turthin said with a smirk. Alex and Aiden looked at each other. Gideon groaned in his sleep. They both knew his time of regrowth was almost over. He would need Ariel to seal his memories. Aiden looked at his brother. "You go ahead, I will see to Gideon. You are too angry to deal with him anyway." "No, I know Turthin, I know that look. I know what he will ask as payment for his help. I will want to kill him and that will definitely cause a lot of headache." Alex politely said he needed to get his son settled and after both he and Aiden will try to settle the matter. The elf prince gave him a calculated look but nodded. Aiden looked at the prince. He looked like a cat who was hunting and had his prey in sight. He shook his head and mentally told Alex they had to leave. Gideon woke. His head hurt. The memories were coming back fast and furious. He remembered battling the basilisk and the dream with the golden dragon. He had woken when his papa had fallen off of Grandpa Draco's back. He looked around. He was in what looked like a cave. For a few seconds he wondered if he was back with General Young, but this wasn't the same. There was a colorful drawing painted on the wall, with temples and goblins and what looked like his papa and grandpa. The room, while made out of rock and had the look of a cave, was actually a room. Gideon got off the bed and looked around. He saw a door and opened it. He heard the loud argument immediately. "I am going to whip his backside raw, Aiden. Do you know what he has done to Severus and his reputation?" This was not some harmless prank. Severus' reputation can be ruined permanently. Severus has charges of vagrancy and theft against him, and who knows what else. The goblins would have probably already sealed all his Gringotts vaults. If they hold him, he could be sentenced to years in a goblin prison. And Turthin. That alone is a mess. That little imp set up the whole invitation for lunch. I really don't like the idea of Turthin knowing Severus is in trouble. Aiden sighed. When things settle, I will go and speak to Arthur. He will deal with his son Turthin. I will, however, go now and speak to the Goblin King Ragnak and get this mess sorted. The guards had no right to stop Severus in the first place. They only stopped him because that little demon told them Severus was a dark wizard. He is confused, Alex. This is our fault. We should have taken him back to Ariel before the memories of Hogwarts came back. We need to get his mind settled and reconstruct his memories. Then you can talk with him. Talk. Aiden, if we had done something like that to Father, he would have taken off his belt and whipped our hides raw right there in the middle of the city. There would have been no talking. Gideon's mind flashed. The images of a large beefy man with a belt came to him. Devil's spawn, we should have drowned you when we got the chance. The voice said. The man landed his belt over and over, screaming at him. Gideon started breathing heavily. He was in danger. He closed the door and went to sit on the bed. He held his head. The memories were coming back. The voices, going into the chamber, the statue. He was confused. The statue was his papa. He saw Snape in his mind, holding him. Gideon shook his head and blocked the memory. He did not want to remember Snape anymore. The man was a trickster who told lies. He blocked the memories. He saw Papa the statue and Papa the man. He was puzzled. He remembered his life with his dad, his papa and grandpa, but he was now getting confusing images of the fat man, a man he should know but didn't. The man had a gun. There was a fire. He saw his dad. No Snape. Snape was there in the fire. No. Gideon forced the memory away. He did not want to remember Snape. The door opened and he saw his papa come into the room. His papa looked angry. Boy. Gideon's mind blanked out. His papa had a belt in his hand. The fat man with the belt came to him. The fat man with the gun. He was the devil's spawn. He was a demon. Gideon looked at his papa. No, not Papa. The statue. No, the fat man. Harry needed to get away. The man reached out to touch him. Harry screamed. He needed to get away. Harry concentrated. He needed to go somewhere safe. He closed his eyes and in his mind he chanted, somewhere safe. Alex looked at his son. Gideon was looking at him with immense fear. He reached out to touch him. Gideon, son. The boy let out a blood-curdling scream and in a flash of light he disappeared. Alex screamed and reached out as if to grab his son, but the boy was gone. Aiden came running in the room a few seconds later. Gideon. Alex. He is gone. He looked at me with such fear, and when I reached out to him he screamed and then he disappeared. I don't know where he has gone. First Severus, now Gideon. Aiden grabbed his brother by the arm. Alex, pull yourself together. Now think, where will Gideon go if he is danger? I don't know. Lady Ariel, come on, we will ask King Ragnak to use the goblin portal. We will go to the goblin village to the base of Ariel's mountain. Come on, Aiden said, and the two Gryffindors ran out. Harry looked at the burrow. He felt a strange peace here. The twins had rescued him. Ron had. He stopped. Ron had betrayed him. Ron had spray painted his clothes. Ron had told Draco his secret. The Death Eaters found him because of Ron. Harry turned around. He was tired and confused. He wasn't safe here. He walked away. He walked out onto a dusty road. He looked around. He had no idea where he was. He knew Ron lived in a small magical area called Ottery Street. Catchpole. If he remembered clearly, there was supposed to have a village nearby. Harry started walking towards the village. After a few minutes he stopped. He didn't know what he would do when he got to the village. He sighed. He was so confused. He sat under a tree. He closed his eyes. All of the memories came back. the trial, Lady Ariel, Golden Heart, the chamber. He was just so confused, nothing made sense. Hello, a dreamy-sounding voice said. Harry looked up and saw a girl looking like she was 12 years old, with long dirty blonde hair and large silvery gray eyes. She was barefoot, had on an old blue dress which had a large pink patch at the side and a bottle cap necklace around her neck. She had a wand sticking out behind her ear. Harry's first thought was that, she is oddly dressed for an angel. Hello, he replied. You look lost, she said. I am. I don't know where I am supposed to go. I am confused, Harry said. You sound like if you were attacked by Raxperts, the girl said. Raxperts. Yes, they float through your ears and make your brain all fuzzy, she said. Harry studied it. He had never heard of Raxperts before, but it sounded just about right. My name is Gideon. She sat down next to him. You do not look like a Gideon, you look more like a Harry to me. He looked at her and absently touched his forehead. There was no scar. I went through the fire, the Phoenix fire. I lived with my dad and my papa and my grandpa Draco. I heard my grandpa talk about reconstructing my mind. I remember my life with my papa and my dad, but I see my dad and he is not my dad and my papa was a statue. I know what happened, but nothing makes sense. I remember things that I am not supposed to remember, and I know I am supposed to block out the other memories, but everything is so confusing. Well then, I think the solution is clear, she said. Harry looked at her questioningly. We need to get rid of the Raxperts, she said. Harry looked at her unsure. She took her wand out and pointed it at him. You are not supposed to do magic outside of school, Harry said. It's okay. Magic told me she gave her permission, she said. You speak to magic, Harry said doubtfully. Yes, and so do you. Every time you cast a spell you speak to magic, you ask her permission to use her power and her gifts, she said. Harry considered it and it made a bit of sense and he nodded. She raised her wand. Harry stopped her. Wait, you did not tell me your name. Do you want the name my father calls me, or the name magic gave me, or the name I am called in school, she said dreamily. Harry looked at her and laughed. He felt comfortable with her. What does magic call you? Luna. That is nice. It means the moon, doesn't it? Yes, I was born at midnight on a full moon, so magic blessed me with the magic of the moon, so I was named Luna, Luna said. That is really nice. And what does your father call you? Honey, Luna said, and Harry laughed out loudly. Are you ready for me to help you with your Raxpert problem? Luna said, and Harry looked at her. He felt comfortable with her and somehow he felt as if she would really help him. He nodded. Luna moved her wand to his head and he felt her magic go to him. She chanted softly and then flicked her wrist. Harry felt a rush of magic as all his memories untangled. He remembered his mum and dad. He saw their smiling faces. He heard his dad shouts and his mum's screams. He heard the cold evil laugh and saw the green beam. He remembered the cupboard, his Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. Dudley and his gang. He remembered his childhood, the names, the beatings, the abuse. He remembered Hagrid, Hedwig, Hogwarts, Ron. Hermione, Snape, the Philosopher's Stone. He remembered going back to Privet Drive, Dobby, the pudding. Ron, Fred and George, the flying car, the burrow, the blocked barrier. He remembered his second year, the basilisk. Ginny. He remembered the dreams, Snape holding him, helping him, going into the chamber finding Alex. He remembered Snape telling him about his mum and dad James. He remembered his dad holding him telling him everything will get better. Ron screaming at him spray painting his clothes. Alex coming back, Wally and the Slytherins, the Quidditch match. Everyone calling him Seeker, the train ride home. Uncle Vernon, Aunt Petunia, the fire, his dad saving him. He remembered Alex telling him he would be his papa, the trials. Lady Ariel, Golden Heart, Peyton, Charlie, the Phoenix Chamber, his dad and papa holding him, telling him they would love and protect him forever. The Black Dragon, the Goblin Village, the dragons, the Elven Princess Warrior, the goblins, his papa angry. There was a flash and he opened his eyes. Does everything make sense now? Luna asked. Gideon looked at her and smiled. Yes, it does. I have found the mind to be a puzzle. If you take some parts out, the puzzle is not complete and you can't see the picture, Luna said. Gideon frowned. The only thing is now that I have seen the entire picture, I realize that I did something really horrible. My dad would never forgive me and Papa hates me. I think I missed some of the Raxperts. There must be still some that blocks your memories, but that tends to happen when you go through so many time zones in a short space of time, Luna said. How do you know about that? Gideon asked. Magic told me. She also told me that your dad will forgive you and both your dad and your papa love you very much. All children do naughty things. I myself put red ink in my dad's printing press when it was supposed to be black. He said it spoiled an entire publication, but I told him that newspapers are supposed to be red, Luna said. Gideon laughed. He turned my backside red and told me that while I was naughty and he hated what I did, he did not hate me, he loves me. I know I will do naughty things in the future and when I do he will punish me, but he will never stop loving me. It's just part of being a child with a parent. I don't know, Luna, what I did was really bad. My papa called me a little demon. When I am naughty my dad calls me gremlin. I do not think your papa means it the way others said it. Think of all the other things he calls you. Gideon thought of it. He called me a gremlin too, an imp and scamp and rascal. I guess demon is just like that. Yes, but I am sure he has called you other names, Luna said dreamily. Little warrior. He says I am his brave little warrior, Gideon said with a nod. Then with a smile he said, Dad calls me son. Gideon felt a surge of love thinking of his dad who rescued him and gave him a new chance at life. He thought of both his parents and in his heart he knew Luna was right. He would probably be severely punished for what he did, but it would not stop either of them from loving him. He knew his dad would forgive him and he knew in his heart his papa loved him and didn't think he was a real demon. Luna gave him a dreamy smile and said, Now you look like a Gideon. I don't see Harry anymore, but I know he is still there. He is part of you, he will always be part of you. Hide him away from the rest of the world, but don't hide him away from yourself. Gideon leaned over and gave her a key on her cheek. Thank you, Lady Luna. You are quite welcome, Sir Gideon, she said, getting up and once more tucked her wand behind her ear. Gideon stood up. The only thing is now I don't know how to get home. She shook her head and said, Call to Magic, she always answers. Bye Gideon and good luck. Gideon looked as the girl skipped merrily away. He closed his eyes and called to Magic. Are you out of your goddamned mind? Harry was an abused child whose memories are unstable. How could you even think of using a belt on him? Severus shouted to Alex. He had almost burst a blood vessel when Alex and Aiden returned to Ariel's tower without Gideon. He walked off and then went back up to Alex and said sternly, Never use a belt on my son. Alex took a deep breath. Severus, the boy deserved a whipping. My father used a belt on me and my brothers all of the time. I know maybe in this time. It has nothing to do with this time or you and your brothers. This has to do with Harry, Severus shouted. He is not Harry, he is Gideon, Alex shouted back. Yes, Gideon the dragon rider, the warrior. Do you realize that in making Gideon you destroyed Harry, my Harry, Severus said. Wasn't that the whole point of him going into the chamber, to undo all of the damage? Alex said, getting frustrated. Yes, undo the physical and magical damage, not undo all of him. You made him block his memories of who he was. Yes, Vernon and Petunia were monsters to him. Yes, he had horrible experiences, but it was all a part of making Harry the kind, loving boy he was, Severus said. Harry behaved like a weak 8-year-old child rather than a strong 12-year-old wizard. I made him strong, Alex said. Before you came along, Harry battled trolls and acromantula and a basilisk and all sorts of dangerous things, including a Dark Lord. He battled the Dark Lord 3 times. He was already a strong, powerful wizard. However, he also stood up against bullies and prejudice and injustice, and that is also a great strength, Alex Gryffindor. Strength is not just physical or even magical. I thought you would have known that considering the amount of times you did Lady Ariel's trials. Severus said. Alex raised his hands in frustration. I don't understand you, Severus Snape. I was only going to punish the boy because of what he did to you. I am not saying that Gideon does not deserve to be punished. What he did was terrible, but you have to understand that our son is different. He is not Gideon Gryffindor, he is Gideon William Griffin, formerly Harry James Potter. He has the memories of 2 lives to contend with, and right now nothing makes sense. Even if you punished him at that point, the punishment would not make sense to him as he was mentally lost and confused. Severus stopped and walked away from Alex. He turned and looked at Alex, who looked like one of his students who was utterly repentant after getting one of his rebukes. Severus sat down. It is my fault. I did not. I should have been there for him. I should not have left him on his own. You did not know what he went through. I did. I should have been there. Alex knelt in front of Severus and put his hand over his. I am the one who was to blame. I was angry at him. Aiden warned me. He told me to calm down, but I didn't listen. Aiden told me to allow him to settle his memories, but I didn't listen. If I had gone to him in a calm, understanding manner, he would not have fled. Severus took a deep breath and said, our son is missing. Blaming ourselves is not going to help. We just need to find him. Alex stood up. I have been trying to call him, but he has blocked me. Severus looked at the warrior. He knew Alex was hurting, but as a warrior he was trained not to show his pain. He stood up and went to him. Severus moved into his arms and just held him. The two just held each other, then they heard the call. They both looked at each other. Did you hear that? Severus asked. Yes. Alex closed his eyes and called to his son. Gideon, do you hear me? Papa, come home. The voice was faded. I can't make out. He is too far, Alex said, frustrated. It's okay, I know where he is, Severus said and shouted for Fox. Gideon sat under the tree and called out to his parents. He heard his papa's call, but it was very faint. He sighed. He was too far. Ottery Street. Catchpole was at the bottom tip of England, and his papa was most likely either by Lady Ariel in Scotland or worse still in Mexico. He stood up and thought about going to the Burrow and asking to use the flow to go to Hogwarts. Hogwarts was closer to Lady Ariel and maybe his papa would get him there. Gideon. He turned and saw his dad running up to him. Dad, how did you find me? Gideon said, running to him. Severus ran over and held his son tightly. I heard your call, you silly boy. Yes, we will make a mind speaker out of your dad yet, Alex said, coming over with Fox on his shoulder. Papa, I am so sorry for running away, Gideon said, and Alex reached over and hugged him. Gideon had tears running down his face. Dad, I am so sorry about what I did. I know now you are not the evil wizard I thought. I have all my memories now and I feel so terrible. I am really sorry. I know I am in big trouble. We will talk about it when we reach home, son, Severus said. Come on, let's go before we get caught by one of the gaggle of redheads that litter this countryside. You have a problem with redheads, Severus Snape, the auburn-haired Alex said in amusement. Yes, you are all hot-headed and way too emotional, and Severus was stopped as Alex gave him a deep, passionate key. Severus pulled out, and don't like to listen, and Alex once more shut him up with a key. Gideon looked at his parents. He knew he was going home to get the spanking of a lifetime, and he was probably going to be grounded and yelled at, but he loved his family and loved his life and wouldn't change it for anything. Gideon woke up and rolled over. He yelped. His backside had touched the bed and it sent a quick reminder of his night last night. His dad and papa had a long talk with him. Even his grandpa came and he and Lady Ariel helped him guard his mind so no one could see his hairy memories. Then his dad gave him a spanking he would never ever forget. He groaned. His dad had used a thick ruler which hurt like the dickens. His dad said he had promised him he would never use a belt or a switch, but the ruler hurt plenty enough. Gideon had to admit that he felt a lot better this morning as he no longer felt guilty and he knew his dad forgave him and still loved him. He got out of bed and took a shower and changed. Lady Ariel said they had an important task to do today and he would need an early start. He went downstairs to the dining room where Peyton and Charlie were having breakfast. The two were laughing at some joke. Good morning, Gideon said. Gideon, Peyton said. Neither Peyton nor Charlie had been around when they had returned the night before and Gideon had spent the entire evening in his room. Gideon just gave a nod. Peyton smiled. You have grown quite a bit since I last saw you. Peyton's eyes twinkled. Charles Weasley, this is Gideon Griffin, Alex and Severus' son. Charlie stood up and shook Gideon's hand and laughed. I know who he is, don't worry, I gave my word as a wizard I would not say anything. Severus really loves you, and his anger at your papa when he came back without you yesterday rivaled my mother on any day. Gideon thanked him. The house elf Jenna came and put breakfast on the table for Gideon, and he moved over to the table. He sat down but yelped and sat back down gingerly. Both Peyton and Charlie gave him knowing smirks but did not say anything. When he had finished his breakfast, Charlie turned to Gideon. Both Peyton and I leave today. We will be hiking back to Hogwarts, which will probably take a week. We are taking the long way back down and around the mountain. I enjoyed the hiking and I actually want a holiday before I return to Parkinson Manor, Peyton said. Charlie smiled. It will also give you and your parents time to establish your presence before I return from seeing Harry settled in his new life. Gideon nodded. Charlie smiled. I want you to know, Gideon, that you can call on me any time. Even if you just need someone to talk, I will be there. Your dad has also given me permission to repeat my 7th year, so I will be around next year at Hogwarts. I will be there for you. We went through the trial together and I think it gives us a unique bond. We are like brothers. Whenever you need a big brother, I will be there, Peyton said, and Gideon gave him a smile. Peyton and Charlie left after breakfast, and Ariel, Aiden, Alex, Gideon and Severus were all on hand to see them off. Severus gave them all the camping gear they had on their trip up, and Aiden gave Charlie a hunting knife made from a dragon tooth and had a golden scale handle. Ariel gave them a copy of one of Aiden's books on the life of the founders and told them to read it. Alex gave Peyton a bag of galleons and whispered in his ear. The boy grinned and nodded. Severus hugged Peyton and told him he would talk to his father before he got back, and the boy thanked him. The two young men gave them happy waves as they set off. Ariel looked at them and smiled. Aiden, Alex, Severus the First, know you all have an important task to do today. Severus looked at Gideon, who was really looking guilty. Severus held his son in a one-hand hug. You have already been punished. It is forgiven and forgotten. Yes, do not worry, my grandson. Your father got into even worse scraps than this when he was your age, Aiden said. As if you weren't there right beside me, Alex said, looking at his brother with a raised eyebrow. I have no idea what you are talking about, Aiden said innocently, but gave Gideon a wink. Gideon giggled. Oh yeah, let me remind you, Alex said, and he and his brother walked back into the tower. Ariel shook her head and then turned to Severus. Do not worry, the Goblin King will drop the charges against you and your reputation will be redeemed. However, you need to watch your back when you go to Tenochtitlan. We will talk again when you return. Gideon and I have an important task to do together. Severus nodded and ruffled his son's hair and started to walk off, but Ariel called him back. I had Jet organize your robes for you to wear today. I suggest you wear them. Severus went up to the room he had been using. Alex had his own room but had spent the night in Severus' bed. A bed that now had an elaborate set of green and silver robes. Severus had never seen such beautiful robes. When Ariel had mentioned the robes, he assumed it was the set he wore for Gideon's adoption ceremony. However, these were magnificent. He put them on and looked at himself. He had to smile. He looked good. Alex came and looked at him with a broad smile. If you wanted to distract me, well, you certainly accomplished your mission. Severus, you look amazing. Ariel suggested I wear them. Severus looked at Alex with a raised eyebrow and said, she also mentioned for me to watch my back. Is there anything you want to tell me, Alex? Alex sat and looked a bit uncomfortable and then, taking a breath, said, we saw Tirthan in Mexico. Severus looked at him and said sarcastically, the happily married elf with 2 children. Alex sighed. Yes, but it is obvious he isn't over me, or at least he showed some signs of his old feelings. But Severus, you have nothing to worry about. I love you and I choose you. You are the one who I want to spend the rest of my life with. He moved behind him and hugged him. When we return, I will ask Ariel and Aiden to watch Gideon, and we can go on a proper honeymoon, and I will make love to you until can't move. Severus smiled but shook his head. Gideon will need us and I have to go back and help with the graduation, and Alex spun him around and keyed him so deeply Severus' knees got weak. Gideon will not die without us for a weekend, and let Albus take care of it. I am not a man to shirk my responsibilities, Alex, Severus said. I am your responsibility, you are my husband, Alex said sternly. Yes, but I am not your servant to be at your beck and call, dropping everything when you snap your finger, Severus said, crossing his arms. Alex glared at him and was about to say something when there was a knock on the door. It was Aiden. Alex, Severus, we need to leave now if we want to be on time. I am ready, Severus said and walked off. Alex grumbled under his breath and followed. Fawkes flashed the group to Mexico. This time the king's guards were waiting on them. Severus respectfully handed over his wand and a small glass case with the silver leaf. Ariel had advised him to do so to the head goblin, who nodded in acceptance. Severus was put in handcuffs which were bound to the front. The goblins tried but failed to put a net on Fawkes. The phoenix gave them a glare which had them stepping back. Fawkes perched himself on Severus' shoulder. Standing to the side looking on was Prince Turthin. He was angry. He had heard that Severus Snape was an ugly greasy-haired bastard who looked like a cross between a vampire and a dementor. This man was very handsome, well-groomed, and was dressed in magnificent robes. He looked strong, confident, and his onyx eyes had a brilliant fire that the elf prince knew only the most powerful of wizards had. The man looked like a wizard prince. Turthin saw the wizard turn and looked directly at him and scowled. He walked over to the small crowd. So this is your criminal husband, Turthin said to Alex. No, this is my husband who is innocent of the charges against him, Alex said seriously. Aiden stepped forward. We don't have time for nonsense, let us be off. The king's guards put Severus in a carriage and drove off. You could ride with me in my carriage if you want, Alex, Turthin said with an inviting smile. Listen, Turthin, and listen well. I love Severus, he is my husband. I do not love you. Whatever we had was in the past, the very distant past. There will not ever be anything between us now or in the future. Severus is the only man I will be with until the day I die. Aiden, let's go, Alex said. Prince Turthin looked at the carriage with the brothers' leave and said coldly, or until the day Severus dies, which is my luck will have it, is today. The Goblin Palace was a magnificent building made of granite and limestone and what looked like gold. It was opulent and impressive. Severus looked at the guards who stood along the walls. The goblin guards were dressed in armor and each had a battle axe, unlike the elven guards who stood at the side, who were dressed in silks and had swords or bows and arrows. They all looked at him in disgust. Fawkes gave him a soft trill which gave him a secure feeling. Severus was taken to a room where he had to wait. He sat on the bench and, remembering Ariel's warning, he leaned against the wall. He started thinking of Alex. The man infuriated him at times. How could he suggest going on a honeymoon now? Graduation was less than a week away and Gideon needed time to adjust to his new life and... Severus stopped. What was he complaining about? Honeymoon. He had someone who wanted to go on a honeymoon with him. He thought back to the last 2 days. Alex was a god in bed and the man loved him. Severus smiled thinking about Shangri-La, under the moon. His mind started straying thinking of what honeymoon with Alex would be like. Fawkes gave a trill and gave him a look. Severus knew the bird was telling him to be mindful of his surroundings and not let his mind wander. He gave the phoenix a nod and then cleared his mind and put himself at the ready for anything. An elf came in and looked at Severus and offered him a tray of refreshments. Fawkes hissed at the elf and Severus told him to take the refreshments away, he wanted nothing. The elf put the tray on the table and left. Fawkes sent a fireball and within seconds the tray was ash. Severus smelt the strong poison. 5 minutes later another elf came in and said he was going to act as his lawyer. Fawkes and Severus looked at each other. The elf said that if he pleaded guilty and apologized to the king he would ensure that he would only have to pay a fine. Severus told him to leave. The elf shook his head and started explaining to Severus why he couldn't leave. Severus reminded the elf why he was the most feared professor at Hogwarts. The elf left. A few minutes later 2 elf guards came in. One Severus noticed was the elf who came to give him refreshments but was dressed this time as a guard. The other spoke. We are here to take you to trial. Fawkes gave Severus a warning trill and Severus nodded. You do know I am considered one of the most intelligent wizards in the world. If you think I am going with you anywhere you are sadly mistaken. I will only leave here with either my Tenochtitlan sponsor Aiden, or the king's guards. One elf took out a knife and said, "You will not be leaving here." Severus looked at them and said, "Oh, I will be, right, Fox?" Fox gave a low angry sound that was like a growl. 15 minutes later the king's guards came in to collect Severus. They were the same guards who had collected him by the gate. The guards saw the wizard sitting on a bench leaned against the wall, looking almost bored. On the wizard's shoulder the phoenix was preening its wings. The guard raised his eyebrow when he saw the two knocked-out elves in the corner. One had a broken nose and a black eye and the other had broken fingers. Both wore burnt robes. "What happened here?" "They came in and tripped on a loose stone and knocked themselves out," Severus said in a bored tone. "And the clothes? I assumed it as a new elf fashion." "It is not to my taste, however I am not known for my fashion sense," Severus said. The guard nodded and said, "Let's go, the court is waiting." Severus stood and the guard checked the binds on his hands which were still secured. The guard used some magic to see if the binds had been removed at any time and saw it hadn't. He nodded and escorted Severus out. Fox trilled and Severus chuckled. The court really was the king sitting on his throne. There were a few members of the Goblin Council who sat to the side, but Aiden had told Severus that they were only there if the king needed advice. The guards from the gateway were there. Severus did not look neither left nor right but saw Alex and Aiden sitting in the front row of the gallery. The elf prince sat in the front, but on the other side, he was flanked by the elf, lawyer, and two others. The prince looked at him both in shock and disgust. He was placed to stand in a prisoner's circle. He heard Fox groan as if in pain. Severus bowed to the king and said, "With all due respect, is it necessary to put a creature of pure magic in a magic-suppressing field?" "He has the ability to flee if you are both found guilty," the king said. Severus wanted to say something that he knew would have angered the goblins and bit his tongue. He reached up and stroked Fox, who gave him a sad trill. The king asked the guard from the gate to speak. The guard said that when Severus came in they were informed that he was a dark wizard and that he was a Death Eater. He asked Severus to fill out the necessary forms which would have given them the time to check the claim, but then indicated that he had no means of payment and that he tried to bribe the guards with a leaf from the elven silver oak which was a contraband item. He said that this was proof that he was indeed dark and they did not bother to wait on the check, but they confiscated the leaf and Severus was ordered to leave. Thereafter Severus sent his bird to attack them and took the leaf, and when the goblin guards ordered them to stop they ran and fled. The king nodded and then asked Severus to speak. Severus indicated that he came to Tenochtitlan as a guest, and after his sponsor had been told that everything was in order and his sponsor left, the guard called him back, and even though he informed him that he was invited he was denied entry. He filled out the necessary forms. When he was told there was a fee he asked Fox to get his sponsor, but the Phoenix was denied entry even though he had been previously allowed in and had been inside and had just come back to help him. He said that the leaf was not a bribe but he was attempting to barter with it. When he was accused of thieving the leaf he informed him that the leaf was a gift, and the guard did not believe him and asked him to leave. He said the goblin had not told him he was keeping the leaf and Fox just went to collect what was his. As a counter-defense the guard said that when he checked with the elf prince, the prince denied any knowledge of the leaf and that as far as he was concerned the leaf was in fact stolen and that the guards were in their right to confiscate it. He indicated that further investigation on Severus Snape indicated that he really was a dark wizard. Aiden stood and asked to speak. The king allowed him. Aiden told the king that he had done all the proper procedure and that he was in his right to bring in who he wished. He reminded the king that he helped in the improved wards of the gateway and anyone who was a marked Death Eater would have been immediately affected by the wards and that Severus had not been affected. He stated that the goblins had no proof that Severus was dark. He indicated that the British Wizengamot had found Severus innocent of Death Eater charges and that he was in fact a spy for the Side of Light. The fact that he walked with a phoenix on his shoulder was indeed proof he was not dark. He said that furthermore the official procedure was to inform him that his guest was being held, which the guards did not do, and that he considered it a personal insult that his son-in-law was treated in this manner. The king nodded and said that the incident at the gate was obviously an unfortunate misunderstanding, however he could not overlook the issue of having the forbidden leaf. The leaf was a gift from Princess Matharinel, Aiden said. Did you see her give the leaf? The king said. Aidan looked at Severus sadly and then said, "No, but I trust Severus' word." "I saw her give it," Alex shouted. "He is your husband, you are biased and your word does not count," Prince Turthan said, walking forward. "As much as I respect Aidan Draco, the fact is my sister does not give the sacred silver oak leaves to non-elves. This Severus Snape fellow is a known dark wizard and spy and therefore an expert in trickery. I am sorry to say he may have tricked you, first into taking him to Shangri-La to steal the silver leaf. He then tricked you in bringing him here to Tenochtitlan to probably steal here. I commend the gateway guards for picking up on the ploy." Fawkes growled lowly. The Goblin King Ragnak looked at Aidan sympathetically and said, "I am sorry my old friend, but Prince Turthan is right in that his sister is known to guard those leaves fiercely and I have never heard of her giving any leaves to non-elves. It is also under his jurisdiction that the leaf falls in. I beg to differ, Ragnak. While my son often speaks on my behalf, I am not dead yet." A tall elf with long blonde hair with stripes of gray in it, walked in. Everyone except the Goblin King, who was sitting, stood and bowed. The Elf King Arthur looked at Alex and gave him a smile. Severus looked at the Elf King. He was surprisingly a big man. Elves were known for their slender figures. The king looked muscular. However, he had on heavy armor which made him look bigger. The elf was clearly a warrior and he saw more of Louisa in him than his son Turthan. "Ragnak, Matharinel gave Potions Master Snape the leaves. Potions Master Snape has worked on various potions which have been of great benefit to the elf nation and has asked for neither payment nor wanted public recognition. When he visited Shangri-La, he indicated to General Yong that he was gathering ingredients for various potions, including one to cure werewolves of their disease. General Yong indicated that Potions Master Snape's aura indicated he wanted to help these beings not for wealth but for noble means. The werewolves are our enemy and such a potion would once more benefit our nation as it would end centuries-old war. Matharinel indicated that even though the tree allowed the leaves to fall for Potions Master Snape, he did not take them, and it was only when she gave it to him did he take it. He did not even ask her for them, but she gave him. She gave him 13 leaves. She indicated to me that she felt that he was a noble being and was worthy of the gift." The Goblin King apologized to Severus for the misunderstanding and removed the magical circle around him and Fawkes and had the guards unbind him. Fawkes shook himself and started what was obvious a rebuke to the Goblin King. When Fawkes was finished, King Arthur said, "While I do not know what he said, I must say, Ragnak, that I was surprised to see you had charged a phoenix for a crime. You certainly honor your people by taking the word of a lowly goblin guard over that of a noble phoenix." While the words were spoken in a kind manner, it was obviously a rebuke. Ragnak, however, said, "I try to be fair and impartial. It would not be the first time that a noble creature goes dark by falling in love with a dark wizard." Fawkes gave a bird version of a growl and moved to fly forward, but Severus held him and calmly caressed the obviously angry bird. King Ragnak stood and gave King Arthur a nod and then left. The Goblin Council then left. King Arthur then turned to Alex and said, "Get over here, boy." Alex smiled and came over, and Arthur gave him what looked like a fatherly hug. He spoke to him, to Severus, shock, in Dragonspeak. Then Alex turned and in English introduced Severus, who bowed. Arthur smiled and said, "Potions Master Snape, it is an honor to meet you. When my daughter told me that Alex not only reappeared but had brought his mate, I was surprised. When she told me who his mate was, I was really happy. Your work has really benefited elf kind. While I assume you did it for the benefit of low elves, it has helped us all. The last wizard potions master to do work for the benefit of elf kind was Salazar Slytherin, and before him Hippocrates. Hey, didn't I make that potion to help cure you of those nasty warts you had?" Aidan said. "Well, seeing that you and your brother made the potion to create those warts in the first place doesn't count. Nor was the fact that I had to whip your hide soundly first before you made it," Arthur said with a chuckle. Severus chuckled. Arthur smiled and said, "Why don't you all come to the palace and have dinner with us?" Alex and Aidan were about to say yes when Severus said, "I really apologize, Your Highness, but I must decline." "You insult us," Turthan said with a sneer. "I was offered your food early, Prince Turthan, and it did not smell as if it would agree with me. I must also get back to my son. I am sure he is waiting to hear of the outcome of the trial," Severus said coldly. Turthin glared at him. Alex glared at Turthin and then turned to Arthur and said, maybe if you and General Young are up for it, you could have dinner with us. I would love for you to meet my son Gideon. He then spoke to him in Dragonspeak. Arthur replied and gave a nod. Alex and Aiden then gave a bow and indicated to Severus they were leaving. As they walked off, Fox turned as if watching Severus back. Arthur looked at the glare of the phoenix and then looked at his son. Gideon was worried for his dad, but Lady Ariel indicated that Severus would be fine. Okay, young wizard, we have an important task. Your magic has grown and changed and you are now the young wizard magic meant you to be. However, your wand is still the wand of your old self. So we have to get you a wand that would be best for you, Ariel said. I understand, but I like my wand. She feels like she is a part of me, you know. Holly is more than a wand, she is my friend and I don't want to get rid of her, Gideon said. Well, you don't have to get rid of her, you can add to her. The same way you went through a rebirth, Holly has to go through hers. The only difference is that you will make the journey with her. Come on, Ariel said. They walked to what Gideon thought had to be the top of the tower. She gave a musical chant and a door appeared. Now don't be afraid, there is no danger here. No traps, nothing in here will harm you. Peyton made this journey yesterday and added to his wand. Now the only advice I have for you is trust in your magic and let it guide you, Ariel said. Gideon went through the door. He entered a long empty corridor which had on either side glass walls which showed different landscapes. To his right there was a large field which had unicorns running around. To his left was a beautiful waterfall with trees on the bank. There were several birds including a few phoenixes. Gideon looked at the birds and laughed when he saw a pair of snidgets speeding by. He laughed and said out loud, you really look like feathery snitches. He continued walking through the corridor. He reached a crossroads and felt a strong pull to the right, so he went in that direction. He saw what looked like a mountain valley with dragons and on the other side flying horses. He looked at them all in amazement. He met another crossroad and went to the left this time. He saw an underwater lake with mermaids and on the other side what looked like beautiful women with long blonde hair and flowing robes. He stared at the women for a while. He saw one turn to him and invited him in, but he shook his head. She got angry and turned into a viscous-looking creature with wings. Gideon ran. Gideon walked down corridor after corridor. He saw all sorts of magical creatures. Some he stared at in amazement. Others he scowled at and others he laughed when he saw. He became tired but took out his wand and said, none of them are worthy of you. He then saw a wooden door appear and he felt, Holly, pull him. He followed and went to the door. He would swear after that his wand moved of its own accord and cast the gold beam which opened the door. It was dark inside, but trusting his magic and trusting his wand he went in. His cast a lumos and saw the stairs leading down. He went down for a long time and part of him wondered if this staircase was the brother to the one in the trial, and he secretly wished for a flying carpet. As he walked he saw the shimmering light from the cave-like wall and moving his wand saw all sorts of jewels in the wall. Gideon thought it was cool and walked on. Finally he reached the bottom and saw he was in a large underground cave. He assumed he was under Ariel's castle and was now in the mountain below. The cave had a strange light coming from all around and Gideon saw the crystal clear lake and a waterfall. It was to the waterfall he felt the magical pull. He walked towards the waterfall, first going around and then midway he stopped and looked down. He did not know what was there, but like with the invisible bridge in the trial he knew there was something there. He walked and while it looked like he was walking on water he felt the strong rock bridge below him. About 12 feet in he felt the bridge slope up though he could not see it. By the time he was in the middle of the lake he was a good 20 feet above the lake. He stopped and looked at the waterfall. He sensed the presence of something behind the waterfall. Gideon was not scared. Whatever the creature was, it was not evil and he knew it would not hurt him. He felt strong powerful magic coming from the creature and part of him felt unworthy. He went on one knee and bowed. You are early, young wizard. I did not expect you for some years, a deep voice said. I was not who I was meant to be and my fathers brought me to the oracle to help me. Lady Alatariel allowed me the privilege to be reborn and now I am back on the path magic desired of me. I am now on a quest to improve my wand. I apologize if I am here unannounced. I simply followed my magic and my wand led me here. The creature was silent and then after a minute said, "You speak of your wand as if it is alive." "She is. Holly is part of magic and magic is alive. She allows me to speak to magic and allows me to use magic's power and gifts," Gideon said. Even though he could not see it, Gideon knew the creature was smiling. "You have a better understanding of magic than most wizards, little one. I was told about the nature of magic by an angel who came to me," Gideon said, thinking of Luna. The creature chuckled and then said, "Well then let me speak to Holly for a minute." Gideon at first was not sure but then closed his eyes and cleared his mind. He raised his wand in the air. He felt the wand leave his hand and he opened his eyes. He saw his wand hovering a few feet above him. The cave was filled with phoenix song. After a minute the song ended and the wand lowered into his hand. The creature said, "You have had an interesting life, Gideon Harry Potter Griffin. Now I believe I can help you on your current quest. You are not only a protector but a warrior and hunter. The item you seek lies in the heart of the beast you slayed. The door to your side will take you to it. Call to your Holly's father and he will help you." Gideon looked to his left and saw a wooden door that he did not notice before. He stood up and bowed. "Thank you, noble one, for your aid." "You are welcome, little prince. Go on. When the time is right we will meet again," the voice said. Gideon moved down the other side of the bridge towards the door. He turned the door knob and opened the door. He bravely walked through. He was shocked when he entered the Chamber of Secrets. He waved his wand and created a large light ball like Professor Flitwick had done. He saw the statue look at him. He walked towards it. "I am sorry, my lord, I cannot speak to you in your language, but I am here for your noble creature's heart. You are Harry but not Harry. I do not understand," the statue said in English with a slight hissing accent. Gideon put his hand on his hips. "You can speak English. What can I say? I am S's Slytherin. Besides, it is fun to listen to what other SSS have to say when they think you do not understand. Little heir of Gryffindor," the Salazar statue said. Gideon chuckled. Gideon then sat down on the ground and told the statue his tale. Salazar was intrigued and told Gideon that while he was sorry that he would no longer be able to come down, he was pleased that he had gone through his metamorphosis and that he would now have other gifts to help him. Salazar then gave him permission to take the heartstring from the basilisk's heart. Gideon wondered for a moment how he was going to get the heart. While Severus had harvested most of the creature, the area where Gideon knew the heart would have been, was untouched. "What is the matter, little Gideon?" Salazar said. "I don't know what to do. Can you help me?" Gideon said. "I can move but not much. But maybe I could direct you a bit. Put on your gloves and get your knife out," Salazar said. Gideon moved his hand through his hair. I don't have gloves or a knife." "You came to harvest a creature and did not walk with gloves or a knife," Salazar said with a raised stony eyebrow. "Well, I didn't know I would need it," Harry said. "You always walk with equipment to harvest potions ingredients. What ISSS that potions master of your SSS teaching you? Go on. 2 doors after the library SSS small bedroom, you will see a chest, bring it for me." The door in the ankle of the statue opened. Gideon ran in. He passed the library and then about a minute later passed a door with a large snake carved in front. The snake hissed at him. Gideon sighed. It was the first time he met a snake he did not understand. He ran on and then came up to a second door which opened as he came towards it. The room was a small bedroom with a single bed, a wardrobe and a side table with a water pitcher on it. At the base of the bed was a chest. It was heavy, so Harry used his wand to levitate it. 5 minutes later he was back out. Salazar hissed and the chest opened. In it was green and silver armor, a silver sword with an emerald snake on the scabbard and 2 matching short knives. There were also 2 smaller chests. Salazar hissed again and the chests opened. In one were gloves, an apron and a hat. In the second one was crystal-looking vials and some potions equipment, including a silver knife. "Put on the gloves and apron," the statue instructed. Gideon did as he was told. It was twice his size. He was going to shrink it, but the statue stopped him and taught him a proper resizing spell. The statue told him that now it will always fit him no matter what his size. Gideon thanked him. He then got the silver knife and went to the creature, and following the statue's instructions was able to cut the skin and take out the heart. He was covered in blood, but the apron and gloves protected him. He put the heart out on a piece of the basilisk hide he put on the ground. Once more following Salazar's instruction was able to take out the heartstring. "Okay, now you have to open your wand and put the heartstring in," Salazar said. Harry reached to take out his wand, but his gloved hand was bloody. He took off the apron and gloves and took out his wand. He felt the coldness and almost fear from the wand. He sighed and knew he couldn't do it. Then, remembering the waterfall creature's words, he closed his eyes. "Holly's father, Fox," Harry called to the phoenix. On the other side of the world, Severus and Alex were helping Aiden pack up some of his things to take with him to England. Fox was on the table eating some slices of mango when he heard the call. He trilled to the three wizards. "Go on, we will see you later, and wherever you are going behave yourself," Alex said. Fox flew up and using his wing swatted Alex behind his head and then flashed out. Fox appeared in the Chamber of Secrets. Gideon explained what he was doing and Fox nodded in understanding. Fox took the wand from Harry and trilled and sang for a long time, and then using his talon cracked open the wand. Gideon saw the golden-looking core on the inside. Fox took the basilisk heartstring and carefully put it in with the feather core. Gideon heard Salazar hissing what sounded like a chant. Fox sang and then shed a tear, and Gideon saw the heartstring and feather core twist together. Fox then sang and Harry saw the magic from the phoenix seal the wand. Both Salazar and Fox stopped their singing. Gideon saw that there was a long scar along the wand. Fox cried on it and the scar disappeared. The phoenix then gestured to Gideon and the boy went and collected a vial from the chest. Fox carefully collected some of the blood from the heart and then poured it on the base of the wand. Gideon did not see what Fox was doing, however the phoenix suddenly dropped the vial, which did not break, and then rose up in the air. There was a large burst of fire as the phoenix caught a fire. It was not like a burning day, but Fox looked like he was in a ball of fire. Gideon turned from the brightness of the flames. After a minute the fire ended and a baby chick and the wand fell to the floor. Gideon ran and caught the bird. The wand fell in the pile of ash on the ground. Harry picked up the wand. The wand now had a reddish hue with a slight silvery hint near the base as the phoenix ash seemed to stick to the base. However, the most beautiful part of the wand was the actual base of the wand. Carved in the grip was a phoenix and basilisk. Gideon looked at it and smiled. Even though he was no longer a Parselmouth, it seemed appropriate. It represented his Gryffindor and Slytherin sides. He waved his wand and green, red, gold and silver sparks flew out. He knocked the light at the top of the chamber and cast a lumos and the entire room lit up. Wicked. He then cast another light ball and Salazar instructed him on how to control it. He then sent it back up to the ceiling. Salazar told him while he was very powerful, it did not mean that he had to use his full power all the time. Gideon nodded in understanding. Salazar then had him clean the apron and gloves and repack them. Gideon also cleared away the remains of the heart and then with Salazar's help put a further protection spell on the remains of the corpse. Gideon then asked Salazar to open the door at his ankle so he could put back the chest. The statue shook its head. "It is my gift for you, little Gideon William." "Thank you," Gideon said. Salazar hissed and removed the passwords and taught Gideon how to put the password on it so it would open for him alone. Gideon used a Dragonspeak password and used his wand to close it. Salazar then told him the spell to shrink the chest and Gideon packed the once large chest in his pocket. The statue then pointed and said, "That door will take you home." Gideon saw a door to his left in the wall. He then moved towards the statue and hugged the toe, where he could reach, and told it thank you once more. As he reached the door, the statue called him back and said, "Tell your papa I am sorry for trapping him. However, I am pleased that he now has a SSSON of his own." Gideon smiled and waved and went through the door. To his shock he was back at Lady Ariel's and the Oracle was standing waiting for him. "So what is your new core?" she asked. Gideon showed her and then showed her the baby fox. She took the phoenix and told him the wand was very appropriate. As they walked down, Gideon excitingly told her of his adventure. Ariel laughed and told him he really was his grandfather's heir. Gideon's excitement bubbled over for the rest of the evening. When Severus and Alex returned, they were greeted to a smiling, happy child. He then showed them his new wand and his gift from Salazar. Alex and Aiden immediately recognized the silver armor and told him that it was Salazar's battle armor. They explained that even though he was a potions master, Salazar was also a warrior and had battled alongside their father when they were young. They told Gideon a few of the stories they heard of Salazar and their father. Severus rolled his eyes when Gideon told him that he should have a story night in Slytherin House and tell some of these stories. King Arthur came for dinner and Gideon graciously met him and then ran outside to see General Yong, who was in the courtyard. Severus was shocked to realize that the Elven King was a dragon rider like Alex. Arthur told Severus that it was because he was a dragon rider that Godric sent his 2 sons to apprentice with him after they did their newts. After dinner was finished and Gideon went to bed, Arthur told Severus stories of the twins that had Severus shaking his head and saying that they were definitely James and Harry Potter's relatives. Arthur spoke with Severus about various potions they had been able to use, and Severus even suggested a few others that he could adapt for them to use. Arthur turned to Alex and told him that he had found a fantastic mate that was far better than his spoilt son. Severus then told him about what happened earlier with the food, the lawyer, and the guards. Alex looked like he was going to kill, and Severus told him he did not have to go and defend his honor and that he had already settled the matter. "I am not a damsel in distress, Alex," Severus said. However, the others saw the gleam in Severus' eyes that said he was pleased that Alex was so defensive of him. It was late when Arthur said he was going and they all went outside to see him off. They saw Gideon asleep on the dragon's front leg. Alex shook his head and picked him up. They all watched as the king jumped on the dragon's back and they flew off. Alex and Severus indicated they were going to bed. Aiden told Ariel they would be leaving in the morning and teased her and told her it was the last chance to join him in his bed. She shook her head and slapped him upside the head and called him a disrespectful brat. While the guests of the castle slept, the oracle made her way down the forbidden staircase to the cave below the castle. In long shimmering pearl robes carrying a lantern, she walked around the lake to the bridge. At the top of the bridge she stood and said, "I heard you met the boy today." "Yes. Did he get his new wand?" "Basilisk heartstring and phoenix feather, very powerful combination," Ariel said. "He is very powerful. He is stronger than I thought he would be at this age, but his painful past has made him stronger. Dumbledore's manipulations have made him stronger in mind than a child should be at this age." The oracle nodded. "His parents will help him have a good childhood along with the right combination of love, discipline and training he would need for his destiny." "He would need them. He would be very powerful when he comes of age," the deep voice said. "Yes, he would be more powerful than your last master." Ariel looked as the large white and silver dragon came from behind the waterfall and stood in front of her. "Yes, he would be, but I am more powerful than I was back then." Ariel smiled and reached out and touched the dragon's face lovingly. "Yes, my dear dragon, you are." Gideon smiled as Hogwarts came into view. It was the most beautiful sight he had seen ever. The castle seemed to glow in magic, and in his mind this seemed like home. He heard his grandpa sigh. "It has been 1,000 years, but finally I am home." Alex gave a sorrowful sigh. "Yes, but things have changed. The school has changed." The dragon did not reply. They moved closer to the school and Gideon pointed to Hagrid, who was running out into the main field, jumping in joy at the approaching dragon. Alex in Dragonspeak and Severus in English immediately reminded their son that he was not supposed to know Hagrid. They had spoken to him at length about how to behave and who would know his true identity. As they flew over the castle, they saw the man in red robes standing on the highest tower looking out. Aiden immediately said, "Some things have not changed. If I did not know better I would have said he was father." "Yes, he does remind me of father. He is just as stubborn and narrow-minded," Alex said in Dragonspeak. Severus glared at Alex and said, "You three are really make a guy feel like a fourth wheel." Alex looked at Severus, but then Gideon said, "But Dad, vehicles need 4 wheels. If you don't have 4 wheels the vehicle can't go anywhere. I believe the expression is to feel like a third wheel." Severus groaned and said, "What I mean is that you three have been talking up a storm for the last 10 minutes and I don't understand you all. You have deliberately left me out of the conversation." Alex hugged him tightly. It was not deliberate. We are sorry for our thoughtlessness, but with Goldenheart not being able to speak English while in dragon form, it is just natural to slip into dragon speak. Severus calmed, and internally there was a little protest in his mind. Every time he got angry or upset, just a little touch from Alex was enough to calm him. He was losing his fierce independent nature. Aiden growled and Alex translated for Severus. Aiden says to remember that he will remain in his dragon form for the next few days just to keep the fact he is an animagus a secret. Both Severus and Gideon nodded. The dragon circled the field near to the lake and landed. Hagrid came running up to them. "Professor, how did you? Wow. What a beautiful Hebridean. Golden horns, no spiky tail. Is this Black Warrior?" Aiden had told them some of his adventures, and in his Hebridean disguise he was known as Black Warrior. "Yes, it is. Who, may I ask, are you?" Alex said as he skillfully jumped down. Alex had not met Hagrid before, and they hoped that Minerva had been successful in not allowing Albus to spread Alex and Gideon's true identity around, especially to Hagrid, who was known not to keep secrets. Severus did the introductions. "Hagrid, this is a good friend of mine, Alex Griffin, and his son Gideon." "Alex, Gideon, this is Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of the grounds at Hogwarts." "Hagrid, Alex is a dragon rider for the International Magical Law Enforcement Agency." "Retired," Gideon said quickly. "Retiring," Alex amended and shook Hagrid's hand. "Yes, Professor Dumbledore said the new Dada teacher may be a retired international or." "He did not mention you would be bringing your dragon," Hagrid said, looking longingly at the dragon. Both Alex and Severus looked at each other. Gideon was also concerned but tested the half-giant to see if he knew he was Harry. "Do you want to touch him? He is really gentle. I have known him since I was a baby," Gideon said. Hagrid looked at Gideon and said, "Oh, you must have had a wonderful life." "I always wanted a dragon growing up." Hagrid then asked Gideon all sorts of questions and was ecstatic when Gideon held his hand and introduced him to the dragon. When Hagrid realized that Gideon could talk to the dragon, the half-giant was even more excited. Alex and Severus took their trunks down, and to Hagrid's absolute delight, Alex asked him if he could find somewhere for Black Warrior to rest. Black Warrior growled something and Alex and Gideon laughed. The dragon, however, followed Hagrid. Severus called a few house elves who took all of the trunks, and then the three made their way to the castle entrance, where they saw Minerva, Phileas and Albus waiting. Minerva smiled when she saw Gideon. She opened her arms and he ran to her and gave her a big hug. Phileas laughed and told him he looked really handsome. To Gideon, Severus and Alex's surprise, Albus laughed and told Gideon he was happy that their journey was successful. Albus welcomed Alex and Severus and asked them about Peyton and about the Oracle. He then told Alex that the elves had completely refurbished the Gryffindor family rooms, and that even if he did not decide to stay at Hogwarts as a professor, the apartment was his. They all went to the apartment, which now had a combination of old antique furniture and new modern things. The apartment had 3 bedrooms. The master bedroom was tastefully done in red and gold. Gideon's bedroom was actually plain white and had the minimum of things. Minerva whispered to Gideon that she was leaving it as a project for both of them to fix up. The boy smiled and thanked her. The last bedroom was a guest bedroom and looked like a typical Hogwarts guest bedroom. All 3 bedrooms had their own bath. Severus said they were far more luxuriant than his rooms. They sat and talked over tea. Poppy and Pomona joined them. Poppy did a quick scan of Gideon and was very pleased. The headmaster was very eager to hear about what happened at the Oracle and suggested that he and the other heads of houses could make the journey later in the summer. Alex and Severus looked at each other briefly, and then Alex told Albus that it was a very good idea. Albus hugged Gideon when Severus indicated that he took off the dark mark for him. Albus said that he always knew it was a possibility, but after Quirrell was horribly killed he did not want to chance it with Severus. Alex told them about his and Severus' magical bond, and everyone congratulated them but agreed to keep things quiet about it. They talked about some of the plans that Alex had, and the headmaster even thanked him when he said that he wanted to help get rid of the Acromantula. Severus looked at the headmaster. He certainly had changed in the last few days on his feelings towards Alex. Severus asked about Remus. Albus said that Remus returned to his home and left a message for Severus that when things had settled, possibly after graduation, he would be happy to accept their invitation to dinner. Albus looked really pleased. Finally Alex indicated that they had to settle in, and Albus, Poppy, Pomona and Phileas said they would see them at dinner. Minerva stayed to help Harry with his room. Severus told Gideon to go to his bedroom and make a list of everything he wanted and get an idea of where he wanted everything. "You know, if you want to speak without me being around, all you have to do is say so," Gideon said, and both Alex and Severus glared at him. Gideon just raised his hands as if to say, "I am going to do what you asked," and then left. Minerva laughed. "He is sounding like a normal teenager. I am so happy. Harry was always so quiet and really shy. Gideon is so confident and so self-assured without being arrogant or snobby. I am really happy. You two have done a marvelous thing." Alex nodded and Severus smiled. Severus looked at her. "What did you do to the headmaster?" "He is certainly quite different from when we left," Alex said. Minerva smiled and said, "I used a very old spell which allows you to erase aspects of a memory and very subtly suggest an alternative. If the spell wasn't so old, it would probably be forbidden, but from what I know, probably less than 5 individuals in the world know about the spell and less may be able to cast it. So you obviously did not erase the memory of who Gideon is or who I am. What did you change?" Alex said. Minerva smiled and said, "I erased the memory of your argument on the tower and a few things here and there. While he remembers being on the tower and you coming in and calling Golden Heart, he is of the belief that he was the one to suggest going to the Oracle immediately. Severus, he believes he was the one to suggest you adopt Harry and that he was the one who has been encouraging you and Alex into a relationship. I have to get you to teach me that spell," Severus said with a laugh. Minerva shook her head and was very serious. "The spell really should be forbidden, and I only used it because I believe it was a life or death situation. Gideon's life was at stake because of Albus' stubbornness. He is a good man, but he too makes mistakes. Leaving Harry with the Dursleys was one, and I think this was definitely one. My heart told me to stop him with the Dursleys and I did not follow it and I regretted it. My heart told me this time to stop him and I decided to take action." Alex said he agreed and asked her about the Weasleys. "I was lucky they were all there except Charlie, of course, and Bill, who was in Egypt. Molly had just informed the others. Ron did not get time to inform Hermione and I was able to stop Fred from writing it down. I used the spell on them and they are of the belief that Harry has gone to America with his aunt and cousin and that he is very happy," Minerva said. "Did you erase Remus' memory?" Severus said. "No, but Gabriel vouched for him. Remus seems genuinely happy for Gideon," Minerva said. "The others who knew, Poppy, Pomona and Phileas, think Gideon is best with you and have all made vows to keep his true identity a secret. Poppy is exceedingly happy and had actually yelled when she heard Albus had informed the Weasleys. They knew I did something to Albus but not what, and they all indicated they did not want to know." Severus breathed a sigh of relief. To Severus' surprise, Alex told Minerva about Aiden and about him being Golden Heart. They had told the others earlier that Black Warrior was Golden Heart with a complex glamour. Minerva was pleased he told her and said she looked forward to meeting him. She said she was going to help Gideon with his room and suggested Severus start considering the graduation decoration as the ceremony was only 3 days away. Severus groaned and said he needed to pack away the potions, ingredients and things he had gotten. Alex said he needed to see Gabriel and suggested to Severus to get Helena to help him with the decorations. Minerva helped Harry decorate his room. They made the room blue, as Gideon said both his room in Severus' apartment and the room at Ariel's was blue and he had liked it. They went to the Hogwarts storage room and selected furniture and decorations. They found a large bean-bag chair a student in the 60s had left behind, as well as a foosball table and a small muggle-looking refrigerator which worked on magic. Gideon was really very excited and even Minerva said she loved the room. It was a cross between a bedroom and a teenage hangout. Of course there was a study area as well. Minerva called her house elf Tibbs and Gideon told him what he wanted for his refrigerator and the house elf said he would get it for him. The butterbeer came immediately. However, Tibbs said the soda and the boxes of juice and bottles of water he would have to go out of the castle to get. Minerva gave her approval. They then relaxed and both settled with bottles of butterbeer. Gideon then told Minerva about his journey to the Oracle and what happened, including what he did to Severus in Mexico. "You certainly gave him a lot of trouble, but to be honest I do not blame you. your memories were all confused and irrational, Minerva said. Yes, but Dad still spanked me because he said that Grandpa had told me what was going on and I deliberately chose to ignore what he said and that even confused my actions bordered on dark. He said he knew that I felt guilty as well. He was right. After he spanked me and well, he got off on the charges, I felt better. I would not do something so foolish again. You also have to learn to trust your dad and Papa and Grandpa Aiden. They will always do what they think is best for you. The reason why Harry got into so much of trouble was that he did not listen to the adults around him and did his own thing, which led to trouble, Minerva said. You did not listen when we told you about the Philosopher's Stone, Gideon said. I did, and put Severus, Phileas and Pomona on alert. If you had listened to me, Quirrell would not have gotten the stone out of the mirror. There was also another spell on the final room that you did not know about, and that is once you entered, the only way to get out was with the headmaster's permission. Even if Quirrell had somehow gotten the stone, he would not have been able to leave the room. You and your friends put your lives in unnecessary danger, Minerva said. Gideon sighed and nodded and said, we should have also known not to ask Lockhart for help going to the chamber. Yes, not all adults are good, you know that. However, Gideon, there are those who you can trust and who would die for you, Minerva said and smiled when Gideon hugged her. What I am surprised about is your trip to Ottery Street. Catchpole. You went to the burrow when you thought you were in danger. It means in your heart you trust them, Minerva said. I guess. Even with everything that happened, I think Molly Weasley would gladly face a feral Noondu to protect those she loves, and I know she loves me, well, Harry. The Weasleys are not very, well, observant and are a bit prejudiced against Slytherins, but I think them good people, Gideon said. Minerva thought that there may have had other words Gideon wanted to say but held back because he did not want to get into trouble. So do you want to stay friends with Ron? Minerva asked, knowing their troublesome relationship at the end of the last term. Gideon nodded and said, yes. The thing is, Ron does really stupid things at times, but there are a lot of good things as well. He is loyal to a fault but is hot-headed and stubborn and doesn't think things through or even think at times. Master Young told me to trust my instincts about people, and my instincts think that Ron would be a good friend. Minerva nodded. That is very good advice. Now how about I give you the non-student tour of Hogwarts? Gideon smiled broadly. They sent a message to Severus with Tibbs, Minerva's house elf, and Gideon contacted Alex via his mind link. Minerva took Gideon to all sorts of places that he was sure even the Weasley twins did not know. They met with various teachers who were around. Minerva introducing him as Alex's son, she explained that Alex was considering being the new Dada teacher. Minerva knew that Severus planned to introduce the boy as his son later that evening at dinner. With Alex's permission, they went outside to meet with Black Warrior, who immediately liked the Gryffindor head of house. With the dragon was Helena, who had been talking up a storm. Minerva asked her if Severus had asked her for help with the decorations for graduation, and Helena said no, but immediately started thinking up of ideas. She wandered away and went to look for Severus. Alex joined them outside, and he told Minerva that he had been in discussion with Albus and had made several suggestions that he had previously discussed with Ariel. That night at dinner, Severus confessed to the rest of staff that he and Alex were mates and that Gideon was his son. He basically told them a variation of what he told Lucius. He however told them that he and Alex separated after an argument about his associates and some of his activities with them. He heard Sinistra loudly whisper, "Death Eater," to Vector. While it was not openly discussed, the rest of the staff knew Severus had been charged as a Death Eater, and Albus had vouched that he had in fact abandoned that life. They all nodded when Severus indicated that Alex had gotten sole custody of Gideon. Albus supported Severus and told the staff that for the sake of their son, Severus and Alex were trying to heal their relationship, and that Gideon would be spending some time with Severus while Alex finished his responsibilities with the Auror Corps. The other members of staff were really excited and all happily welcomed Gideon. They knew Severus was an exceedingly private person and promised to keep it all a secret for now. Albus told the staff that the next day Alex was going to do the school a favor by trying to get rid of the Acromantula in the forest. Hagrid got angry and said he would not allow it. Alex got annoyed and stood and yelled back at the half-giant. Alex told him that the Acromantula were man-eaters and did not belong in the forest. He argued that the danger to the children was too great. Professor Kettleburn, the Care of Magical Creatures professor who was retiring after graduation, said he agreed with Alex. He however suggested that maybe an alternative living arrangement could be made and asked Alex to hold off killing the creatures. Kettleburn said that there were a few uninhabited islands in the Hebrides and that they could possibly appeal to the ministry for one. "We live in the Hebrides," Alex said. He, Severus and Aidan had agreed to use the house in the Hebrides as their main home outside of Hogwarts. "Which island are you thinking of?" Kettleburn spoke of a few islands and what they would need for the giant spiders. Alex said that their island was really close to some he was suggesting. Kettleburn indicated that Acromantula could not swim and that if the ministry allowed them one of the islands that they would put heavy security on the island to prevent the spiders escaping. Vector asked Alex about his island and he said it was under a lot of charms and that it was hidden but it was very close to the dragon reserve. "Does your dragon live with you?" Bathsheba babbling asked. "Yes, he does at times. You cannot really own a dragon, it is an intelligent independent being. He lives with me because he chooses to and not because I force him. Even though we are partners in the Corps, he is not owned by the ministry. Dragons are very particular and you must have a strong bond with your dragon before it would allow you to be a rider. He is very much like my brother and is a member of my family. Just like family, there are times he would go off on his own but he considers the island his home as much as I consider it mine. He is here with me right now but if I come to live at Hogwarts, I doubt he would come and would probably stay on the island or go and spend some time with the other dragons," Alex explained. "It is a pity he would not be here. Having the children, possibly the younger ones, learn about dragons by witnessing a dragon would be a fantastic lesson. The older Newt students go to the reserve once a year for a weekend. It should be longer but it is an expensive trip," Kettleburn said. "Well, I can ask him if he wants to come for a few days or maybe I could host a few children for a few days on my island. That should cut the cost," Alex said. "That is marvelous, but wouldn't the children going to your island violate the privacy wards?" Kettleburn said. "No, I could allow special portkeys through. As a matter of fact, I was thinking of inviting a few children to the island. Albus, I am sure you remember that Saturday is Gideon's birthday. Maybe a party on the island, where a few second or even third year Hogwarts students you think would be suitable to invite could be invited," Alex said. Albus beamed and said he knew exactly who to invite. The next day Amelia, Fisher and Mad Eye came and Alex and Albus had a long meeting with them. Severus had Gideon help him and Helena with the decorating of the Great Hall. Helena basically did the decorating and Severus and Gideon did the leg work and physical stuff. Some of the other teachers came and helped but Severus knew they were curious about Gideon. That evening Alex and Severus left Gideon with Minerva as they went out for a few hours. The rest of the staff found it romantic but Severus told Minerva that they needed to go and fix up the house in the Hebrides. Alex gave the head house elf Ogden a portkey to the private island. Ogden and a few house elves went to help them. They took the trunks with Aidan's things from Mexico. Alex dropped Severus off the next morning but he and Aidan left and indicated they would be back in a few days. Gideon was a bit disappointed but spoke to his papa via their mind link for a while before he was okay with it. Gideon moved to his room in Severus' apartment and it was like at the beginning of summer. Gideon told his dad that he felt most at home there. When they realized that all of the clothes Severus bought Harry was too small for Gideon, Severus decided to take his son shopping in Diagon Alley for new clothes. Like before, Severus went overboard with the clothes, however this time Gideon was not so shy about purchasing the clothes and even asked for a few things he wanted. They even had a slight disagreement when Gideon wanted a t-shirt with a skull and Severus said it looked too much like the skull on the Dark Mark. The man in the store just shook his head and spoke on teenagers. After getting clothes they went to the bookstore and Gideon picked up several books to add to his collection and a few on topics that now interested him like dragons and swords. When Mr. Flourish saw Severus he told him that they had gotten a new potions book that he wanted him to consider adding to the Newt level book list. The man called to his assistant to bring the book. To Severus and Gideon's shock the assistant was Ronald Weasley. "Mr. Weasley, you have taken a summer job, I see," Severus said. Ron looked at his professor in shock. Gideon forgot that none of them had seen Severus' new look. Severus had on robes, but they were green and were slim-fitting and quite stylish. His short hairstyle and slight tan made him look really different. Mr. Flourish tapped Ron on the back of his head and told him not to be rude and to answer. Yes sir. My parents thought it would be good for me," Ron said. "It is only for a month and then we go on vacation to Egypt." "Yes, well, a few extra galleons would come in handy in Egypt. I do hope with your first salary you buy yourself a proper wand," Severus said, and Ron nodded. Severus looked at Gideon and then at Ron and said, "Ronald Weasley, this is Gideon Griffin. He is the son of a friend of mine. You met his father Alexander Griffin in the hospital wing last week. Gideon, this is Ronald Weasley. He will be a year ahead of you at Hogwarts." Gideon put out his hand and Ron shook it. "You are Charlie's brother," Gideon said, and Ron looked down at the dragon book in Gideon's hand and nodded. "You like dragons like Charlie," Ron said. "Yes, I am going to be a dragon rider like my papa when I grow up," Gideon said with a big smile. Ron looked like he was going to say something and changed his mind. He then said, "We got an invitation to your birthday party on Saturday. I am hoping it will be fun," Gideon said. "Yes, I am looking forward to it," Ron said, though he did not sound too enthusiastic. "Yes, well, we will see you on Saturday. Gideon, let's pay for your things. I still have a few stores to go to before we return to Hogwarts," Severus said. Ron's eyebrow rose. Snape was actually sounding like a normal human and even smiled when the boy asked if they should buy a book on photography for his grandfather. It was obvious to Ron that Snape knew the boy well. He also remembers Snape coming in with Mr. Griffin that day in the hospital and Harry saying that he had met Mr. Griffin's son and that he would most likely be in Slytherin. Ron sighed. He had been excited when they had been invited to the party, but now he was sure it would be filled with Slytherins. Professor Dumbledore said the boy's father wanted to invite children who were suitable for his son and that he wanted him to know a few people before going to Hogwarts. The headmaster had given Ron a wink and told him that he had to show Gideon the benefits of being in Gryffindor house. He remembered his mum whispering and telling him the same thing about Harry 2 years ago. He really hated the fact that Harry would not be returning, but Harry had said to try and make Gideon his friend. Ron nodded. He would keep an open mind. Severus and Gideon went to the apothecary and the cauldron shop and then sat to have lunch at one of the roadside cafes. Whether Mr. Twilfit or one of the other shopkeepers had passed the word, there were several people, some former colleagues of Severus, who passed by, all looking at Gideon. When Severus saw Lucius and Draco, he was actually not surprised. Lucius looked at Gideon and smiled. "Professor Snape, how very fortunate first that we happened to see you today. I was going to owl you to speak to you about a donation to Slytherin House," Lucius said. He was keeping up the appearance as he didn't want Severus to get in trouble with Alex. "You may sit, Lucius. I told Alex about you and Draco," Severus said, and Lucius smiled and sat and indicated for Draco to sit as well. "So is this young man Gideon," Lucius said. "But I really don't have to ask, Severus, he is very handsome and a combination of both his parents." Severus smiled and looked at Gideon, who was frowning. "Gideon, this is a good friend of mine, Lucius Malfoy, and his son Draco." "Draco is my godson." There was a flash of annoyance on Gideon's face. He did not say anything, just nodded. Severus glared at him and said, "Gideon," there was an obvious warning in his tone. Gideon straightened and looked at them with a condescending look. "Mr. Malfoy, Draco, it is a pleasure to meet you." There was a slight snooty tone in his voice. Lucius laughed, but Draco was obviously annoyed. Lucius inquired on Alex and about his trip. Severus smiled and indicated the trip was very successful and that Alex was abroad on business for the next few days and had allowed Gideon to stay with him at Hogwarts for that time. Lucius smiled. "That is fantastic. Maybe you two could come to lunch on Friday. It is Draco's birthday and you know I always throw a party. It may be good for Gideon to meet with others his age." Actually, that definitely sounds like a plan. As a matter of fact, Gideon's birthday is on Saturday and his father is throwing him a party and asked that a few students from Hogwarts be invited, so Gideon would meet them before going to school in September, Severus said, and ignored the glare Gideon was giving him. "That sounds marvelous. Please send the invitation. Draco will definitely attend," Lucius said. Both adults started talking on several matters and ignored the glares the two boys were giving each other. Gideon looked over and saw Ron walking down the road carrying a delivery of books to the bank. Ron looked at them and frowned. Gideon shook his head. He knew his friend and knew what he was thinking. He sighed and hoped that he could still salvage his relationship with his former best friend. Gideon was silent for the rest of the Diagon Alley trip but was very vocal when they returned to Snape's apartment at Hogwarts. "Are you out of your mind? One tried to end Avenue and then kill me, not to mention he did kill my uncle and burnt my house down, and the other hexed my broom which made me fall from 150 feet in the air. They are my enemies. I don't understand how you could even be friends with them knowing the kind of people they are and what they did to me. I thought before it was because you needed to be because you were a spy, but now you no longer have the mark, you cannot be a spy. How could you pretend as if they are such great friends?" Gideon screamed. "First of all, I want you to calm down," Severus said. "No, I will not calm down. They tried to kill me, both of them," Gideon screamed. Severus really wanted to smack the boy but knew it would solve nothing with him in this rage. "Gideon, do you think I would allow anyone to harm you?" he said calmly. Gideon glared at him and shook his head and said, "No." "Do you think I approve of what Lucius and Draco did to you?" "No, but," Severus held him. "No buts. The reality is, even though I am no longer a spy, I have to keep up certain appearances. Lucius has a dark side and right now he is the pseudo-leader of the Death Eaters. If I make myself his enemy, he will come after you. Also at one point in time Lucius was my friend and as such Draco is my godson. Draco is spoiled and arrogant and thinks that he is the ultimate in wizardry, and if it wasn't for me he would have been worse. The thing is, Gideon, Draco is at a crossroads. He has a good heart but has been trained to be the way he is. I have always tried to steer him away and led him to an alternate path. If Voldemort were to return, Lucius would willingly sacrifice Draco. I want when Draco has that decision to make, he would not follow his father blindly. Part of the reason why I tolerate Lucius is because of Draco." "But Dad, he tried to kill me," Gideon said more calmly than before. "And he got thrown off the Quidditch team for it. While Lucius rewarded him for it, I made him stand the consequences of that action. If I reject Draco or I openly show that I am enemies with Lucius, then Lucius would demand that Draco not associate with me and he would be lost forever. Without me Draco will become evil. Right now there is still hope for him," Severus said. Gideon sighed. "I will give him a chance. I wouldn't promise to be all buddy-buddy, but I will give him a chance." "Very good. Now go and stand in that corner for 10 minutes for screaming at me." "Dog," Gideon whined. Severus turned the boy around and sent him to the corner with a light swat on his backside. "Gideon, get a move on or we will be late," Severus said, knocking on the boy's bedroom door. "Dad, do I have to go? It would be hours of boring speeches and having to sit still." "I really don't want to go," Gideon said. Severus sighed. Part of him wished he didn't have to go, but graduation was an important function and he was the Slytherin head of house. "Think of it as a lesson in diplomacy. Now you have less than a minute before I come in there and dress you in that bright purple set of robes the headmaster sent for you." Gideon came out dressed in silvery robes with black and green patterns on it. Severus smiled. "You look great. Where did you get those robes?" "Lady Ariel," Gideon said, and Severus nodded and said he should have guessed. "Now remember best behavior," Severus said, giving him a warning glare. They went to the Great Hall and Severus put Gideon to sit where he could get a good view of the stage. Gideon of course knew it meant it was a good spot where his dad could see him from the stage. A few of the teachers passed and acknowledged him. Then Gideon saw someone who he did not expect to see. "Wally," Gideon called out as the boy and his parents passed. Mr. McNair looked at him and scowled, and Gideon felt the dark magic coming from the man. Wally looked at Gideon with confusion as he did not recognize him. He however gave him a smile and a nod. Gideon sighed. He almost blew his cover and couldn't believe he was so stupid. He saw others he recognized: Captain Flint, Pusey, Derek and Bull from Slytherin, Nicholas and Brittany, and a few others from Gryffindor. They were in graduation robes. The ceremony was long and Gideon managed to stay awake, but he was glad when it was over. After the formal ceremony there was a feast and Gideon sat at a side table with specially invited guests but actually had a good time talking with Madame Bones. After dinner, Severus came over and told him there would now be a special function in the Slytherin dorms for the newly graduated Slytherins and told him he did not have to attend and could go to their apartment if he wanted. Gideon happily left and went to their apartment. Half an hour later there was a knock on the door and the scroll next to the door said it was Walter McNair. Gideon put down the book he was reading and opened the door. "Hello," Gideon said. Wally looked at him strangely. "Is Professor Snape here?" Gideon shook his head. "No, he should be in the Slytherin dorms." Wally looked disappointed. "I just came from there and did not see him. I had hoped." Gideon looked at the boy. He looked depressed and had large bags under his eyes. He remembered when he first met him. Wally had told him how he had gone to Severus when he had bad nightmares and the professor had helped him get over things that scared him and would be there when he needed to talk. Gideon remembered that he was not the only child who Severus had helped. "Do you want to come in and wait? I am sure he will be here soon." Wally looked at Gideon and then nodded. He came in. Gideon called a house elf and asked her to provide some refreshments and to ask his dad if he could come for a while. She nodded and left. "You hailed me out earlier," Wally said. Gideon sighed and said yes, and coming up with a lie said, "I am starting Hogwarts soon and Severus has been trying to convince me to go into Slytherin House, so he showed me a few of his memories and showed me a few of his students who made house life fun. You were one of them. I did not expect to see you today. Severus said you would be the 7th-year prefect when I come in." Wally nodded and then said, "My brother graduated. You don't look like a first year." "No, I will be going into my 2nd year. I was homeschooled but my papa is coming to Hogwarts to be the Dada teacher, so I will be coming too. He and Severus are good friends. I am staying with Severus a few days as my papa has some business to take care of," Gideon said. "I am Gideon, by the way, and I know you are Wally. Walter McNair." Wally nodded and said, "You can call me Wally." Gideon looked at him. "Are you okay? You look as if you haven't been sleeping well." Wally nodded. "I have been having nightmares. Severus is good at helping with nightmares. Have you tried keeping a dream journal? I am told it helps," Gideon said, and Wally looked at the boy with a strange expression. The door opened and Severus came in. "Walter, is everything okay?" Gideon excused himself and went to his room. He stood by the door and heard the boy weeping. His father had been one of those who had gone with Lucius to burn down Harry's house. He said his father had celebrated that night and said that they had killed Harry, and he said that he had screamed at his father and said that Harry was a great person. His father beat him badly. He said the next day when they heard Harry was alive, his father got angry and had beaten him more. He spent most of the last week in the hospital. Wally said that even though the rumors were that Harry had left the country and was now safe, he was worried that his father would get him. He said he was having nightmares of Harry burning alive, screaming for help, and his father torturing him. Gideon went to his trunk and took out the dream journal Wally had given him. He had not used it. Since moving in with Severus and Alex, he did not have need for it. Wally was a great guy, and the fact that he was having nightmares about Harry being harmed made Gideon feel bad. He looked at the green journal with the silver snake on the cover. If he gave it back to Wally, he might be suspicious. Gideon got out his wand and cast a spell in Dragonspeak on the journal. He watched as the silver snake turned into a silver dragon. Gideon nodded. He listened at the door and heard his dad talking to Wally. 5 minutes later he heard his dad say he would get a few files of dreamless sleep for him. He heard his dad leave, so Gideon decided to take the chance. He came out of his bedroom and went to Wally and gave him the dream journal with the silver dragon on the cover. "Here, this is a dream journal that you can use." Wally looked at the journal and said, "This looks really expensive, I can't. It was a gift given to me by a friend who cares for me, but I no longer need it. I no longer have nightmares. I want you to have it, so you know you have a friend who cares for you as well," Gideon said, and hearing the door to his father's lab close, he ran back to his room. As he closed his door he saw Wally pocket the journal. 5 minutes later he heard the door close as his father and Wally left. Gideon smiled and knew in his heart everything would be okay. Later that evening Wally sat in his room and looked at the journal the boy had given him. He opened the journal and as if on instinct he turned to the page in the very middle. It had been a habit of his to leave little notes in the middle of his books. He saw the small inscription in his own writing, to Seeker from Wally. Everything will be okay, I just know it. Wally smiled. From the moment he had seen the boy in Snape's apartment he had his suspicions. Now they were confirmed. He turned and looked at the blood stain on the carpet on the floor. His blood, the house elves hadn't gotten it out. His father had said it was a reminder of what would happen if he spoke traitorous words again. He knew that if his father or brothers knew what he knew they would not only kill Harry but Severus as well. He could not let that happen. He pulled out the middle page of the journal and using his wand set it on fire and then banished the ash. He picked up his quill and wrote, "Friends who care for you will always protect you." Wally closed his eyes and started doing the occlumency exercises Snape had started teaching him last year to help with his nightmares. He knew occlumency also helped you protect your mind and secrets you may have. Wally had to keep this secret or die trying. Gideon stood in Malfoy Manor with a drink in his hand that he did not drink. Lucius Malfoy had taken him around and introduced him to all of the important people, all of whom Gideon knew were Death Eaters. Lucius then introduced him to all of the children of importance. Crabbe and Goyle now stood on either side of him like bodyguards. Gideon wanted to scream but knew he was in enemy territory. Gideon saw Severus looking at him and he nodded and took a deep breath. He went over to where Draco stood with Theodore Nott, Pansy Parkinson, Millicent Bulstrode, Blaise Zabini and a few others from their year group. They were talking about Quidditch. Gideon politely asked Draco if he liked the present that he had given him, a few opal eye scales and a potions book. Yes, it was a worthy present. How may I ask that you came on such rare potions ingredients? Draco asked in a snooty tone. My grandpa has friends in many countries, one lives with the opal eye dragons in Australia. We visited there last week, Gideon said. You actually met with the dragons. I have a book on dragons, Theodore said. Draco and I love dragons. Yes, my papa is a dragon rider, so I grew up near dragons. I have met Hebrideans, opal eyes, a Chinese fireball, Peruvian vipertooth. I even met a Greek hydra but that was a long time ago, when I was 7 I think, Gideon said. Wow, you are so lucky, Theodore said. You said your papa is a dragon rider, does that mean he rides a dragon? Blaise asked. Don't be silly. He probably means he is a type of dragon handler, Pansy said. No, I meant dragon rider. He rides a dragon, a Hebridean named Black Warrior. He is an international Auror, so he goes all over the world hunting dangerous criminals, Gideon said. They were all silent and then Theodore started asking Gideon about some of his adventures and Gideon told them. He did not see Draco leave the group angrily. Gideon actually had fun with the small group and once more reminded himself that not all Slytherins were bad. Pansy finally asked him how he knew Snape and he said, he and my papa are friends. You are a Parkinson. Yes, Pansy Parkinson, Pansy said with a smile. Your brother Peyton spent a few days with us last week. Severus brought him with us when we went to Lady Ariel's. She was able to cure your brother, he is back to normal. I think that was part of the reason why Severus came with us on vacation this year to help your brother. Pansy looked angry. I thought I had gotten rid of that prat once and for all. She stormed off. Millicent shook her head. Pansy is really jealous of her brother, he is so perfect. He is handsome, really smart and gets perfect grades. Her father used to pretend she did not exist and her mother kept telling her she had to be more like Peyton. She was really happy when he messed up. Her parents paid more attention to her. Peyton said she was the spoilt princess who got away with everything. She did not have the pressure of getting good grades and their father doesn't breathe down her neck to be perfect all the time, Gideon said. I just thank Merlin, I am an only child, Blaise said and Millicent said he was lucky. What about you, are you an only child? Theodore asked. Yes, though if my parents had another I would be really happy. I would love to have a little sister, Gideon said. Be careful what you wish for, you might actually get it and then regret it, Goyle said and the others laughed knowing he had a little sister. Lucius called all of the children together and Narcissa brought out a large birthday cake for Draco. It was a Quidditch field with tiny Quidditch players and a golden cherry for a snitch. They sang, Happy Birthday, and Lucius presented Draco with his birthday present, season tickets to matches with the Tuchel Tornadoes, the top team in the country, and an invitation to practice with them. Everyone cheered. It was a fantastic present. Afterwards, Draco told the others, "After training with the Tornadoes, Snape will have to put me back on the Slytherin team." "You were Seeker, weren't you?" Gideon said, and Draco glared at him. "I am Seeker," Draco said indignantly. "I am the best Seeker at Hogwarts." "Oh, it's just. Severus told me that if I am sorted into Slytherin I would be Seeker. He told me the spot was vacant, as were a few other positions, as many on the team graduated. He told me if I wanted to be Seeker, I would be," Gideon said naughtily. Draco looked like he wanted to cry. "What broom do you have?" "Mine is a Nimbus 2001, and my dad promised me that as soon as they came out I would get a firebolt," he said quickly. "Those are great brooms. I will be making my own broom. It is a family tradition," Gideon said. Draco laughed loudly. "Making your own broom? Are you sure you are not a Weasley? Do you churn butter and wear clothes from the second-hand store as well?" "No, I wear clothes from Twilfits, as you saw me and my Severus with the bags a few days ago," Gideon said. "No doubt Severus' annual charity case, helping the poor whelp. Last year it was the Potter orphan, this year it is you. What did you say your papa did? A dragon dung sweeper?" Draco said, sneering at Gideon. "Just because I take pride in making something of my own doesn't mean that we are poor, Draco," Gideon said with a sigh. "There is also nothing wrong with being poor. It is not how much money you have or even your blood heritage that determines who you are. It is your actions and the choices you make in life that determines the kind of man you are. Something only poor people and mudbloods say," Draco spat. Gideon wanted to say something, but Severus came over and said, "I am sorry, but we have to go. Draco, I hope you liked the present and you have a good birthday. I will be seeing you tomorrow for Gideon's birthday party. I have given each of your parents an invitation." "I am sorry, Professor, but we might not be able to make it," Theodore said quickly, and Draco chuckled. "I am surprised, Theodore. Your father said you would be most excited to attend. After all, it is not often that you get to go to a private island where there would most likely be dragons." "I know Gideon's dragon Black Warrior might be willing to give rides," Severus said. Theodore's eyes lit up. "Arthon might come with his Chinese fireball as well." Theodore screamed he was definitely coming. "It might not be a good idea for them to meet General Yong. He might roast and eat a few of them," Gideon said, glaring at Draco. Severus frowned at Gideon and said, "Well, he hasn't eaten you yet, so I wouldn't worry. Go on and thank Lord and Lady Malfoy for inviting you to the party and give your farewells." Gideon looked up at Severus and then did as he was told. Severus looked at Draco and the others. "I had hoped you would make a good impression, Draco. Gideon is really important to me and I want you two to be friends. Now please, I want you all to come tomorrow." Millicent said that she would be there and she was sure the others would come as well. Severus gave them a small smile and nodded. Draco glared at the boy who was leaving with Snape. His father had said the same thing, he wanted them to be friends. He did not want to be friends with the boy. That boy took all of his friends' attention away from him on his birthday, and he seemed to have his godfather wrapped around his finger. There was no way he was giving him his position as Seeker. That no-good Harry Potter was gone, but it seemed as if Draco had a new enemy, one by the name of Gideon Griffin. Ron dressed in his best formal robes and sighed as he saw his ankles showing. He wished he had enough saved to buy a new set of robes. His salary was not much, and this week he had bought a new wand and a present for this birthday party. He sighed. He hated being poor, and now he had to work for his own galleons. He hated it even more. He picked up his present, a small plain red dream journal. It did not cost much, as he had gotten a discount from Mr. Flourish as an employee. Somehow the journal reminded him of Harry. He looked and saw Scabbers looking at him. His mum had said to leave him, but Scabbers looked like he wanted to come. He put the rat in his pocket and went downstairs. His mum looked excited. It was the first time he saw her really happy since Harry had left. Dumbledore said he wanted them to make a good impression with this boy and his father. His mother looked at it as a new mission for the light. Ron shook his head and thought all he wanted was to have a few good friends. His mother made sure and looked them all over and then took out the portkey. A minute later Ron, Ginny, Fred, George and their mother landed in a lush valley next to a fantastic-looking manor. They were greeted by Snape and the man Alexander Griffin and taken to the back of the house, where there was a large black dragon and several children. Ron sneered when he saw the Slytherins. He saw quite a few Gryffindors including Neville Longbottom and Colin Creevey. Colin came over and snapped a picture of them and ran off. Ron saw a few from other houses both in their year and the year below. He saw the birthday boy talking with Hermione and Susan Bones. Molly gestured to them to go in the direction where a few teachers stood. Ron saw McGonagall and the headmaster talking with a man with sandy brown hair and scars across his face that his mum knew. She called him Remus. Remus kept looking at Ron strangely and kept smelling the air. Ron felt uncomfortable, so he politely moved away, saying he was going to give Gideon his present. He saw Remus following him. He was almost near Gideon and saw Hermione waving when the large dragon raised its head and looked at him. It roared and started moving towards him. A few children screamed and Mr. Griffin ran towards it. He saw the dragon glaring at him and then was Mr. Griffin talking with it. Mr. Griffin started walking towards him and Ron felt really uncomfortable. He felt Scabbers move and jump out of his pocket. Pansy Parkinson screamed and said, "A rat." The dragon roared fiercely and Scabbers ran for his life. The man Remus ran after the rat and shouted, "That is not a rat. He is an animagus." Ron looked on as Snape, Mr. Griffin, Remus and the headmaster ran after Scabbers. Ron ran after them, dropping his present. Mr. Griffin was almost near Scabbers when Draco and his father portkeyed in. To everyone's shock, Scabbers turned into a man, grabbed Draco and put his wand to his neck. All of the others stopped and backed off. Lucius looked at the man and said, "Pettigrew." The man Pettigrew said something in a strange language and disappeared with Draco. Draco at first didn't understand what was going on. He saw a large group of people running towards him. He heard the shouts but did not see the rat until it started to turn. He was frozen with fear when the man grabbed him and put the wand at his throat. Before he could even think to scream for his dad, they disappeared. The room looked like a mass of confusion. There were pots and pans and a large wooden table and a stack of chairs, all looking like someone had made it themselves. Draco had never been in such a poor, homely-looking room. He did not get a chance to look too much around as the man dragged him and put him to sit on one of the chairs. Draco looked at the man. He wasn't very tall, plump, balding, had rat-like teeth and his clothes looked like rags. "Do you know who I am?" Draco shouted and stood up. The man slapped him hard across his face and shouted for him to sit down. Draco had never been slapped on his face before and it hurt. He sat down and the man waved the wand and bound him. The first thing the man did after Draco was bound was take the boy's wand and pocket it. "I know exactly who you are, Draco Malfoy. I also know your father has made himself to be a great leader, praising himself rather than seeking our Lord. He will pay dearly. I remained faithful to our Lord. I will get him the prize. When our Lord returns, your father would be on the ground crawling in the dirt and I would be the one highly favored. My father will kill you," Draco said. The man slapped him hard again and Draco could not help his tears. Peter smirked and walked off. Peter knew it was only a matter of time they found out where he had gone to. He needed to leave and leave quickly. He knew all the secrets of the house. He went first to Percy's room. Fortunately, Percy wasn't there. He went to the secret box where Percy kept his galleons. Percy worked as a tutor in school and even secretly did papers for other students. Of all of the Weasleys, Percy was most Slytherin-like. He took the bag. It felt like over 300 galleons, the boy's life savings. Peter cast a feather light spell on the bag and put it in his pocket. He took a bag and packed a few things. He went to the twins' room. He turned into Scabbers to avoid the bobby traps and went and got a few other things. They had Muggle money hidden. Going to Ron's room was a waste of time. Ginny had a few good things. Jewelry and journal that was filled of everything Harry Potter. Peter packed some clothes from Arthur and went to the pantry and got some food. Everything was packed and shrunk and put into his pocket. He went to where he left the boy and saw he was gone. Percy had heard someone come in and was angry. He had hoped for a day of peace and quiet and to have the whole house to himself, something that had never happened before. He started towards the kitchen to see who had come when he heard the voices. He heard the slap. He hid and silently made his way to the kitchen. You had to learn stealth and evasion when you had brothers like Bill who wanted to experiment turning you into creatures, like Charlie who constantly wanted to pound on you, like Fred and George who liked to play pranks, and like Ron who squealed on you to your parents every 2 seconds. Percy looked at the man. He had a rat-like quality to him. He saw the victim. It was Draco Malfoy. Percy did not know how the man was able to get into the burrow, but he knew the man was up to no good. As soon as the man left, Percy snuck into the kitchen. He put his hand over Draco's mouth first and then indicated to him to be quiet. Draco nodded. Percy let him go and was happy that Draco did not make a sound. He silently used his wand and undid the binds. "Come on, let's get out of here," Percy said quietly, and Draco nodded. They went towards the flow, but Percy stopped and frowned when he saw the man leaving his room. The man opened the twins' room and turned into Scabbers. Percy gasped but fortunately was not heard. Draco nudged him. "Let's go please." Percy nodded and they went to the mantle. There was no flow powder. "Damn, Mum hasn't bought any. We will have to run for it," Percy said quietly. They saw the man leave the twins' room and go to Ginny's room. Percy held Draco's hand and pulled him. They ran back to the kitchen and out of the house. Percy took him to a shed a little way off. It was a broom shed. Percy grabbed 2 brooms. Draco looked at the old brooms. "Aren't you like going into final year? Can't you apparate us?" "I have just learned to apparate. I have never taken anyone and I don't want to risk splicing you. I am also not going to apparate and leave you here alone. Come on, the Lovegoods live a mile away and the Diggories are close as well. If we go to either we will get help." Percy handed him the broom. They jumped on and flew to the burrow's gate. Draco had never liked any of the Weasleys, but he knew Percy would protect him. The Weasleys were poor, uncultured and really wild, but they were honorable. They were almost at the gate when the man popped in front of them. As a seeker, Draco was able to dodge the hexes the man was sending, however Percy wasn't that lucky. Percy was hit with a stunner and fell like a log off his broom. Draco needed to get out. He looked back and saw the man hexing the boy. He shook his head. He needed to escape. By the time he reached the gate he heard the horrifying screams. Draco stopped. Something inside him stirred. He heard his godfather's voice in his head and he turned back. Draco saw the man hitting Percy with the Cruciatus spell. Draco had to do something. He didn't have his wand. However, he knew Percy could not take much more. He picked up a rock. He moved behind the man and had intended on hitting him, when the man suddenly turned around. Once more Draco was in a bind. "How noble of you, Malfoy. Your father would be so disappointed." "Don't worry, I will give you a chance to redeem yourself. You are going to come with me. My master would need a nice young body as his sacrifice and you would do nicely. It is what your father has been grooming you for. After all, I would just be the one to present you," Peter said. Percy's body hurt and he could barely move. However, he could not allow the man to take the boy. "I am going to need something to turn into a portkey. Albania is too far to apparate with you," Peter said more to himself. He looked at a book that was sticking out of Percy's pocket. He moved to grab it and Percy grabbed Peter's hand and bit down on it. Peter screamed and pulled. Percy had bit down so hard that there was blood. Peter pulled away and a small chunk of his hand was ripped off. Peter cursed and then kicked Percy in his face and Draco heard bones cracking. "I wasn't going to kill you. You were a decent owner and not really a bad kid. However, now I am going to." Peter raised his hand and Draco was sure he was going to cast the killing curse, but there was a series of loud pops and Severus, the headmaster, Amelia Bones and a few he didn't know appeared. Peter cursed again and looked at Draco, who was more than an arm's length away, but moved to grab him. "Peter!" Remus shouted. Peter looked at his once best friend and sneered and then apparated out alone. Severus ran and checked his godson and undid his binds. Albus checked on Percy. "We have to take him to the hospital wing. He is in a bad state," Albus said, checking on Percy. "We will take him to St. Mungo's," one Auror said and conjured a stretcher to put the boy on. "No, Poppy could." Amelia glared at Albus. "This is not Hogwarts, Albus. We are taking him to St. Mungo's, the woman said firmly. Can we follow Pettigrew? Severus said, holding Draco. Amelia shook his head. He apparated, it would take hours to track him and he might be gone by then. He said he was taking me to Albania to the Dark Lord. He said he was faithful and he said the Dark Lord would want a sacrifice and I was being groomed as a sacrifice and the Dark Lord would return and make my dad crawl in the dirt, Draco said, sounding shaken. Amelia sighed and watched as the oars took Percy away. I am taking Draco with me and will call Lucius, Severus said, and Amelia nodded. As Severus and Draco left, Amelia told Dumbledore, you know it means that Peter was most likely the traitor. They watched Remus, who had slumped to the ground on his knees and was crying. Dumbledore nodded and said, almost 12 years an innocent man has been in Azkaban. I will make a trip to Azkaban this evening, Amelia said. We will make a trip to Azkaban this evening, Albus said, and Amelia nodded. Gideon had been having a good time and was talking with Hermione and Susan, who were telling him all about Hogwarts, when he saw Ron coming towards him. Then there was mass confusion and trouble. He heard his grandpa Draco tell his papa about a rat animagus and dark magic, but did not understand until he saw all the men running after Scabbers. Gideon ran after them. He turned around the side of the house when he saw Scabbers turn into a man and disappeared with Draco. Lucius screamed out and dropped the present he had in his hand. It was a tank with a snake in it. The snake hissed angrily as the tank fell on the ground. It was agitated. Fortunately the tank did not break. Peter, that was Peter Pettigrew, Remus said. I don't care who he is, we have to find him fast. He has the boy, Alex said, and took out his wand and examined the area. Severus went towards Lucius, who was looking ready to kill. Ron stood in shock. Gideon, Ginny, Hermione and Fred and George were now beside him. Amelia Bones, who was at the party, came running over and Albus explained what happened. Molly also came and gasped in horror as she heard that Scabbers had turned out to be a man and had kidnapped Draco. Molly looked at Ron and scolded him. I told you to leave Scabbers at home, why did you bring him? Alex looked at her. So you knew he was an animagus? Molly looked at him. Of course not. Albus said. Molly would never knowingly have allowed someone to harm her children. Alex scoffed. She is just an idiot for allowing them to play with a large rat and did not scan it to see if it is safe. Severus went and put his hand on Alex, who took a breath. Severus said, Draco is my godson. Do you know where Pettigrew took him? You can't apparate off the island. He used one of the discarded portkeys and reversed it. I will just have to figure out which one, Alex said, and they all looked at him. He acioed all of the discarded portkeys that had been dropped on the ground. The most recent was ours. We should go to Malfoy Manor, Lucius said, sounding unusually panicked. Do you have a way of tracking your son? Alex asked. He has a ring that he has on. Yes, I can track it, Lucius said. Amelia said, I will send a few oars with you. No, I have my own people, Lucius said coldly. Severus made a portkey for Lucius to leave the island and Lucius left. Hermione immediately said, how does Professor Snape know the coordinates to make a portkey off the island? Albus looked around and saw the children. He turned to Molly. Molly, do you mind taking the children back to the party? Molly turned and started directing the children away. Gideon said, can I go see about my present? He gestured to the tank on the ground with the snake. Severus turned and looked at the tank for the first time. That is a Merlin's Mamba, it looks agitated. It is best you leave it alone for now, Gideon. I will take care of that in a while. Leave it to calm a bit, Severus said. Alex looked over and said, I will deal with it. It is too dangerous. There was a low growl and they turned and saw the dragon. Ron gasped. He had not noticed the dragon, which was standing right behind them. The dragon growled a low growl and then an almost rumble, and they saw the snake calm and went still. Is it dead? Fred asked. The dragon growled and Alex said, no, asleep. Gideon, you can take the tank and put it in my office. I will decide what to do with it later. Gideon moved towards the tank and saw Ron next to him. Ron asked him if he needed help. Gideon could have easily used magic to levitate it, but nodded and allowed Ron to help him. They picked up the tank together and took it inside. Ron looked around. Inside the house was amazing. Is that a real ancient Grecian vase? Hermione's voice said, and Gideon chuckled and was not surprised the girl had followed. Yeah, could you go and open that door over there next to bronze jars, Gideon said. Hermione ran forward and opened the door. They went into the room. It was a large office. Hermione looked at it. It was beautiful and filled with many books on one side, a marvelous Muggle-looking painting. There were artifacts from all around the world. She loved this room. Hermione, could you clear an area over there? Gideon said, and Hermione ran over to where he had indicated. It was a low set of shelves below a beautiful painting of a castle. She removed the ornate standing ivory and gold clock and put it on the large desk. She then moved a black and gold box that was at the side of the clock. She looked at the box. There were runes on it and a carving of a badger. This looks like the Hufflepuff badger, she said. Gideon looked at the box and said, probably is. My family is distantly related to Godric Gryffindor, and this island was once owned by him. The house has a few things from all of the founders. There are a few books. The desk too, I think, was Godric's. He and Ron put the tank on the top of the shelves where Hermione had cleared. Hermione and Ron looked around the room in wonder. Gideon looked at the snake that was still sleeping. I wish I could talk to snakes. Ron looked at him. Like Harry. Gideon nodded. I met him once when Papa allowed me to visit Severus. He was translating a set of scrolls that were in parcel script. I heard what happened to him. I am glad he's okay and safe now. Your father and Snape are good friends, Ron said. Yes, they are. My papa is friends with many at Hogwarts, but he and Severus are the same age, so I guess they have more in common, Gideon said, and Hermione nodded. Harry is the heir of Gryffindor. Shouldn't he have all of this stuff? Ron said. Gideon glared at him. I would suspect Potter Manor would be filled with many things. What we have was left to our ancestor, and we have kept our things and our heritage preserved. Just because he is heir doesn't give him rights over what we have. If your parents leave you something, does it give the children of your brother Charlie to claim what you were given because Charlie may be their heir? No. What Godric left to his eldest son Gideon would be at Potter Manor. What he left to my ancestor Aiden is here. Alex and Aiden, the twin sons. You are descended from Aiden, Hermione said. Yes, Gideon said, sounding annoyed. He was angry that Ron basically accused his family of stealing from Harry Potter. Ron nodded and did not even apologize. He was still looking around and then looked at a set of pictures on the desk. Is this you? He picked up a picture in a gold frame and turned it. It was the picture Aiden had taken when Ariel had given Gideon to Severus for the first time. The picture showed the smiling Severus holding Gideon and Alex looking at him. It was a fantastic picture. Severus was still glowing from the cleansing ceremony and the recent say asterisk, and looked young and very handsome, and the angle of the picture you did not see the broken nose. If you did not know it was Severus, you might not have made him out. Yes, that is me with my dad and my papa, Gideon said, and took the picture from Ron and put it back on the desk. Your father is gay, Hermione said in disgust. You were born of a male carrier, Ron said, and Hermione looked at him in horror. Yes, now let us leave, Gideon said firmly. He saw Ron looking at another picture. It was of Snape in his green and silver robes and with Fawkes on his shoulder. It was taken the day of the trial, but when they had returned. It was taken in front of Ariel's castle, and Snape looked like royalty. Is this your dad? Ron said. It was obvious Ron did not make out Snape. Gideon took away the picture and put it back on the desk. Get out of here now, Gideon said angrily. Hermione huffed. There is no reason to be rude, he only asked a question. Yes, it is my dad. Now just leave. My papa doesn't like anyone in here, Gideon said, and practically pushed Ron and Hermione out. How could you be born of a man that is not normal? Hermione said as they left the office. No, it is rare, but my dad was powerful enough to carry me, Gideon said, getting annoyed at Hermione. But that is impossible, Hermione said. No, it is not. You are obviously Muggle-born, Gideon said. You have a problem with Muggle-borns, Ron said, immediately on the defensive. No, I was just saying it is obvious. Everyone who lives in the wizarding world know that it is possible for powerful wizards to get pregnant and have children, Gideon said. That is just wrong, Hermione said. Are you calling me wrong? Gideon said. It's not natural, Hermione said. Minerva came towards them. Are you three okay? Auntie Min, could you please have a talk with your student about say in the wizarding world? This girl just told me I was unnatural because I have two fathers. She obviously has never been educated about the wizarding world. This one practically accused my family of stealing from Harry Potter because we have things that belong to Godric Gryffindor and the founders. They got angry because I told them to leave my father's office after they started pawing all over his desk and looking at personal thing, Gideon said angrily. Minerva looked at Gideon. He really was so different from Harry, who would have never complained on his friends. Harry might have run off to cry if Hermione had called him unnatural. Minerva looked sternly at Hermione and Ron. Alex came in. Minerva, the portkey was to the burrow. Severus, Remus, Albus and Amelia have gone with a few oars. Could you see to the party and stay with Gideon for a while? I am going with Black Warrior to hunt this beast. He switched to Celtic, which Minerva knew but the children didn't. If he is the Weasley's rat, he may know things that we cannot afford him to know. She paled and nodded and glanced at Gideon. Alex looked at Gideon. I am sorry about your party, but I have to go. Gideon shed a tear but nodded. He watched Alex walk off towards the stairs in the direction of the bedrooms. Minerva sighed and told Gideon, you know this is important. Gideon nodded and then glared at Ron. What kind of idiot are you to bring a rat to a birthday party, worse one that has dragons? Minerva sighed and said sternly, Gideon, I am sure Ronald feels badly enough. Now you have guests, with your dad, Papa and Grandpa not here, it is up to you to be host. Now take a breath and go outside and see to your guests. Gideon took a breath and stood up straight and said, yes ma'am. He walked off. Minerva looked at Ron and Hermione. Hermione said, men can't have babies. His father must have told him that to make him accept his gay lover, which is also just wrong. Men can't, wizards can. Miss Granger, just because you are not aware of something doesn't mean it is not possible. You do not know everything, and it is obvious that you know very little. Now it was also very, very insulting to call that boy an abomination simply because of your own ignorance and prejudices. I would have thought after your experiences you would be more understanding. Minerva was annoyed at the girl. I never said he was an abomination, Hermione said. No, you said it was not normal and it was wrong that he was born of two men, Ron said. Which is not very polite, especially when it is the boy's birthday party. And you, Ronald, Gideon was right. What possessed you to bring your pet rat to a birthday party? It was very poor form. You need to think. You knew there would be dragons here. Even if your rat did not turn out to be a wizard in animagus form, did you not think it would be dangerous to have a rat here? Minerva said. Alex came back down the stairs in his armor with sword and a bag slung across his back. Minerva, I would appreciate it if you stay here until we return. You can use your usual room. He gave a brief look to the children and she nodded in understanding. He wanted to give the impression that she was a frequent visitor. Of course, child, you know I am always there for you when you need me, Minerva said. Alex gave her a key on her cheek and walked out. Minerva gestured for the two children to walk out as well. Before they all reached the front door, it opened and Severus came in with a shaken Draco. Pettigrew escaped, said he was going Albania to the Dark Lord, Severus said. He turned to Minerva and then looked at Ron. He told Minerva, get Molly. Percy tried to rescue Draco and Pettigrew attacked him. He does not look good. They have taken him to St. Mungo's. He hexed him and used the cruciatus and broke a few of his bones. He was going to kill him, but Uncle Sev and the headmaster and the Aurors came in at the same time and he escaped, Draco said, his voice trembling. Severus looked at Alex. I am going to give him a sleeping draft and put him in one of the guest bedrooms. Put him in the empty room next to Gideon's. Minerva's room is opposite. She may stay a few days. I am going to find Pettigrew, Alex said, and Severus nodded. Severus looked at Ron and Hermione. He wanted to key Alex but knew he couldn't in front of those two. He directed Draco to the direction of the bedrooms. Alex sighed and went outside. Gideon had the party in full swing. Professors babbling. Vector and Burbage had some wizarding games going. Phileas was helping Molly in serving drinks and slicing up cake, and Kettleburn was with a few of the children and were examining the dragon, who was now resting. It would open its eye on occasion looking around. Hagrid was just staring at the dragon. When Alex appeared in his armor, everyone turned and looked at him. Several of the girls giggled and the boys looked at him in wonder. Theo looked at him in absolute admiration. There was a loud roar and they all turned and saw a Chinese fireball dragon coming in. All of the children and Hagrid and Kettleburn screamed in delight. The fireball landed and Arthur jumped off and took off his helmet. Everyone gasped when they saw the handsome elf with long blonde and silver hair in golden armor. "Where is the birthday boy? Come on over here," Arthur said with a smile. Gideon ran over and the elf king gave him a hug. "I have a present for you." He took out a shrunken chest and enlarged it. "Happy birthday, Gideon William." "Thank you, sir," Gideon said and took the chest, which was really heavy, and Alex came over and took it, holding it with ease. Alex told Arthur, "We have to talk." He then started talking rapidly in Elvish. There was a roar and Gideon went over and hugged the fireball, who threw him up in the air. Black Warrior growled what sounded like a chuckle and Gideon's squealing laughter could be heard. All of the children looked at the interaction with amazement. Hagrid and Kettleburn stood with their mouths open. Arthur and Alex came over and everyone heard Arthur growling at the dragons. General Yong put Gideon down and the fireball growled lowly. The fireball turned to Black Warrior and spoke to him. Everyone looked on as Alex bowed to Arthur and then expertly climbed on Black Warrior's back. The black dragon turned and walked away a bit to be away from the crowd and flew off. The children cheered and then they heard Gideon roar a bit like the elf had done. "You could talk to the dragons," Theo said, running over to Gideon. Gideon nodded and said, "Yes, just like Papa can." "Watch," Gideon shouted out a roar. They all saw Black Warrior turn in the air and saw Alex stand on the dragon's back. Alex waved his wand and streaming behind him, written in red and gold, were the words, "Happy birthday, Gideon." The children cheered. The dragon and Alex then flew off away from the island. "Show off," Arthur said and then looked at the children. "So who wants a ride on General Yong?" Minerva laughed. The children looked so happy. The scary events of a few minutes ago were forgotten. She watched as Ron and Hermione went to apologize to Gideon. She really hoped that they would be friends. Harry really loved his friends. She smiled when she saw Theodore Knott, Susan Bones and Neville Longbottom all sitting on the Chinese fireball with Arthur. Molly tried to tell the elf in armor that it was too dangerous for the children to ride the dragon, but he laughed and told her it was perfectly safe and indicated for the dragon to take off. Minerva sighed and went to tell Molly about Percy. Severus came outside and was accompanied by Albus, Remus and Amelia. They looked at the lingering birthday greetings in the air and at the Chinese dragon in the air with the children. "I see King Arthur made it," Severus said. "King," Amelia said. "Yes, he is king of the High Elves. He was the one who mentored Alex and Aiden," Severus said. "It did not dawn on me that there would be those who would be alive who would remember them," Amelia said quietly, so only Severus and Albus heard, and Severus nodded. "Where is Alex?" Albus said. "He flew off a while ago, but he says he is going to hunt Pettigrew," Minerva said, coming over with a fussing Molly. "I told Molly she could leave the children here while she goes to the hospital," Minerva told Severus, who nodded. "Alex is being reckless. We should form a team and get the order together," Albus said. "I will get Fisher. We are doing this officially, Albus. Alex is registered as an international Auror and I will approve this mission. It would help prove serious possible innocence if we can capture Pettigrew," Amelia said, and excused herself and went to call Fisher. Severus sighed and said, "Lucius is going to form his own team, I am sure." "Did you contact him?" Minerva asked. "Yes, he and Narcissa are upstairs right now, but he has already asked me to care for Draco for a few days," Severus said, and Minerva nodded. Amelia came and told Severus she needed portkeys to bring Fisher and 2 of his men. He nodded and went to organize with her. Albus and Molly left to go to the hospital. Lucius came out with Narcissa 10 minutes later. They both looked at the dragon giving rides in shock. Lucius, however, quickly recovered and told Severus he was gathering his men and they were going after Pettigrew. Severus nodded but told him the Aurors, including Alex, were going to hunt for him. Lucius nodded. As an afterthought, Severus said, "If McNair is going, ask him if he would not mind sparing Walter a few days. I might need a babysitter." Severus looked around and whispered, "And there are too many Gryffindors here. I need someone to help convince Gideon to go to Slytherin House." Lucius nodded and left. Severus and Minerva along with Remus continued helping the others with the party. Amelia came with Fisher, two unspeakables in black robes, and Alistair Moody. Albus had asked Amelia to include Alistair on the team going to hunt for Pettigrew. Not only was he a senior or he was one of Albus' best friends and a member of the order. King Arthur came over while Hagrid went up on General Young alone. Severus introduced him to Amelia, Moody and Fisher, and then to Remus, Minerva, Phileas and the other professors. Arthur told Severus, Fisher and Amelia, I have sent for a few of my warriors and Alex has gone to get some help. My warriors should be here this evening so we can all go then. Fisher nodded and said he would be happy to form a team. Arthur nodded. Severus said he would show them where they could set up a base. Severus took Amelia, Fisher and the unspeakables inside the house to make their plans. Mad Eye looked at the dragon with Hagrid on its back. Is that safe? Arthur laughed. Very. General Young is accustomed taking many of my children and grandchildren and all sorts of things on his back and talons. He is domesticated. Remus asked. Are you? Arthur said, glaring at the werewolf, who immediately backed off. Arthur said, Severus trusts you, so I will. However, you know our kind have been at war for centuries. Remus said his only war was with himself. Arthur nodded. General Young is actually a retired general in the imperial armies of China, back when the realms were all united. We have been friends for well over 2 millennia. I trust him more than I do my own children. He is your mount, Alistair said. If you mean is he the dragon I ride, then yes. We are bonded partners. It is a relationship that is similar to that of a familiar. It is a magical bond. I am connected to him. I can hear his heartbeat and I can feel his magic and he mine. It is the same relationship Alex has with Black Warrior. True dragon riders are rare, however Alex informed me he found one who will need to be trained and find his dragon. Gideon is a dragon rider as well, and I know Alex has started helping him look for his dragon, though I think he would be a few years before he is ready. I sense there are 1 or 2 here who may have the potential. Like whom? Phileas asked, and Minerva looked at Arthur. Arthur had asked a few their names. 1 or more of the first 3 I took up: Neville, Susan and Theodore. The boys Blaise, Vincent, Gregory and Ronald also have an affiliation to dragons, but they are not riders. The girls Hermione and Millicent also have affiliations. It would be a few years before they are ready, however. There are female dragon riders, Alistair said, looking at the normally ladylike Susan excitingly petting the dragon who had landed. He saw Theodore and Neville now getting a bucket of water for the dragon. I have known a few, Arthur said, and then said, when magic calls to you, you listen regardless of your gender or nature. My daughter, who Alex and Aiden call Louisa, is a battle maiden. She is actually my personal bodyguard, though I have her guarding my realm as I am away. She is currently training a new battle maiden. Mad Eye nodded. There were loud roars and Alex returned with Black Warrior and brought 3 Hebridean dragons with him. Severus came out. Alex jumped off of Black Warrior as it was landing and the children cheered at the antics. Who are these new dragons? Severus asked. Didn't think I would go away and leave you unprotected now, do you? Alex said, and Severus rolled his eyes, though they all saw he was pleased. When the party ended a few hours later, Theo did not want to leave but thanked Severus for inviting him and told him it was the best day of his life. Amelia looked at her niece in astonishment. The girl was excited and was talking non-stop. Her hair was out and she looked a mess. Susan was always prim and proper and always very ladylike. Fisher whispered to Amelia, she is more like you than you thought. Alistair chuckled. Phileas and the other professors, especially Kettleburn and Hagrid, all thanked Alex and Severus for a wonderful time and all helped the party guests leave. Minerva spoke to Burbage, who said she would escort Hermione home. Hermione asked Burbage why they were thanking Snape for invited them, and Burbage said that he was the one who suggested the party and organized for them to come. Hermione nodded, though she looked at Alex and Severus standing next to each other and then at Gideon. Severus breathed a sigh of relief when she left and mumbled about it all too curious for their own good Gryffindors. Minerva looked at the Weasley children. Albus had come over for a while and had said that both Molly and Arthur were at the hospital where the healers were still working on Percy. He said Bill was arranging to come to England. Alex also indicated that Charles should be nearing Hogwarts in a day or 2. We could do some shuffling around, but they could stay the night, Alex said, and Albus thanked him. Susan was also still there as her Aunt Amelia was coordinating with the others. Amelia indicated that she, Albus and Remus were going to Azkaban. Minerva made the suggestion that Amelia leave Susan for the night as well. Amelia indicated that Susan would not sleep over, but she would come for her after she returned from visiting Sirius. It would not be a problem for her to stay, she could share with Miss Weasley, Severus said. Where is Ginevra? I haven't seen her since she first arrived, Minerva said, looking around. They all now noticed Ginny was not around. They heard a loud scream. Severus looked up in the direction of the top floor of the house. That is Draco. He sprinted off. There was a mad rush as almost all of the adults ran after Severus in the direction of the screams. Remus and Arthur were the only ones who remained. Gideon was about to run off as well, but in a flash Arthur held him back. Oh no, little prince, you will stay right here with me. Gideon looked like he was going to say something but heard the rumbling from both Black Warrior and General Young, and he nodded. I am sure the boy just has really bad nightmares, Arthur said, and called the 3 Weasley boys and Susan to his side. Gideon heard General Young say, that does not sound like nightmares, that sounds like someone is attacking him. Arthur rumbled back, shush, you want all of the children running scared and panicking. Gideon looked at him and Arthur held him. But what about our sister? Ron screamed. I am sure she is fine, trust the adults to find her, Arthur said. Ron folded his arms angrily and said, if Harry was here he would have gone to save her. There was another loud scream. Gideon looked up at the window. He really wanted to run off and remembered what McGonagall said about Harry getting into all of the trouble that he had been in because he did not trust the adults. He knew his dad and Papa would help Draco and find Ginny. He looked at the others who were looking frightened and worried. Maybe you all could help me unwrap all of my presents, Gideon said. Susan smiled. Open the one we brought you, I hope you would really like it. No, he has to open mine first, Arthur said with amusement, and Gideon nodded. There was another scream and the Elf King said, let's all move over to the table with the gifts. You too, Mr. Lupin, let's help the birthday boy with his gifts. You mean the table that is now surrounded by all of the dragons? Fred said. I don't think you are in danger, but a little extra protection is not a bad idea, Arthur said, and they nodded. Alex was the first to reach the rooms and was followed almost immediately by Severus. They both saw Ginny with her wand out hexing Draco and screaming it was all his fault. Severus was going to stun the girl, but before he could say the spell, Alex had her disarmed and was holding her. Fisher, the 2 unspeakables, Alistair, Albus, Minerva, Amelia came in. Ginny, Albus said in shock. Severus went and checked Draco. The boy was shaking uncontrollably. He was crying and he smelt like he urinated himself. Severus scanned him. A binding charm, stinging hexes, whipping hexes, and a bone-breaking curse. She was torturing him, Mad Eye said. One of the unspeakables moved to take an official record of the spells done on Draco. It was standard procedure in a crime, to document the evidence to take to trial. Albus instantly said, no, we are not going to arrest her. This was a crime, Albus. This is not Hogwarts, we just cannot simply ignore it, Alex said. Albus looked at the girl who was shaking and mumbling that it was Draco's fault. Amelia came over and said, Ginny, why is it Draco's fault? What did he do? What, Amelia, you can't blame Draco for this, Severus said angrily. No, Severus, I don't think she is, she just needs the girl to talk, Alex said and gestured to Minerva, who came over and took the girl from him. Severus nodded. He looked at Ginny. She was obviously in shock and right now not in a sound state of mind. He had seen it often with Voldemort's victims and at Hogwarts with the most abused students. He took a breath. Normally he was the one who comforted the traumatized students, but right now he was too emotional as his godson was the one attacked. Alex came over and held him tightly and told him that Draco needed some potions. Severus got up to leave, but Draco screamed for him to stay. Alex turned to Fisher and told him where the potions lab was, and the unspeakable nodded and left. The unspeakable who was examining Draco finished and indicated he was going to heal Draco's broken leg, and Madame Bones gave him a nod. With a wave of his wand, Draco's bones snapped back in place and Draco screamed once more. Amelia turned back to Ginny. Sweetie, you want to tell us what Draco did? It was his fault, he tried to kill Percy. He is a snake, he is evil, he tried to kill us all, Ginny said. Minerva said, Ginny, Draco wasn't the one who hurt Percy, it was Peter Pettigrew, he kidnapped Draco. No, it was Draco, he is a snake, he is evil, Ginny screamed. Wait, so because Draco is a Slytherin he is the evil one and not the Gryffindor rat Animagus, Severus said angrily. Alex put his hand on Severus' shoulder to calm him. No, he is not a Gryffindor, he is a snake, not a Gryffindor, Gryffindors are warriors of light. Harry is a Gryffindor, he saved me and he should have saved Percy from the evil snake, but Draco, he told the Death Eaters where Harry was and they made Harry go away, so now the snake tried to kill Percy, Ginny screamed. They all looked at each other and Minerva said, Ginny, not all Gryffindors are light, Peter Pettigrew was a Gryffindor. No, he was a snake, he had the snake on his hand, he was an evil snake and it was all Draco's fault, she screamed and tried to get at Draco but Minerva held her. Severus turned sharply at the girl and said, how do you know he had a snake on his hand? When do you see the snake on his hand? Peter had moved quickly and had his right arm which held the wand exposed when he held Draco. If he was a Death Eater the mark would have been on the left. Minerva gasped, understanding why Severus was asking. If Scabbers was really a man and he had lived with the Weasleys for many years, she remembered Percy with the rat his first year, it was conceivable that he had changed back into a human and had entered the girl's room at night and no one would have known. Ginny started trembling. What? I never said anything about a snake. There are no snakes, Harry killed the snake. It is Harry's destiny to kill all the snakes, he is a Gryffindor. Albus came over to her and said, Ginny, have you ever seen Scabbers as a man? She shook her head. No, Scabbers is not a man, he is a rat. It was a trick, they made it look like Scabbers was a man but it was not real. Just like the man in the diary. They made me hurt Colin and Justin and Hermione and Penelope. They wanted to kill Harry. They use us, you see, the snakes. Draco used me to try and kill Harry and then he tricked Ron into telling him about Harry's uncle and where Harry lived. Ron is innocent, it's not his fault. Ron is a Gryffindor, he is a warrior of light. Draco tricked him, that is what snakes do. And now it was Draco, you see, he tried to kill Percy. It's his fault. Scabbers is not a man, he is a rat, it was all a trick by the Slytherins. Draco's dad, he gave me the diary and the diary it turned to a man and now Draco's dad, he turned the rat into a man. He made it happen so Draco could go and kill Percy. They tried to kill Harry and then made him go away and now they tried to kill Percy. We are the warriors of light, they are killing us all, she said, screamed. The unspeakable who had been seeing to Draco came over and scanned her and said, she was never say you ally assaulted. Minerva, Albus and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Fisher came back with an armful of potions. He handed a calming draught to Amelia who gave it to Ginny. After a little coaxing from Minerva she took it. When she had calmed, Albus asked her, Ginny, the man with the snake on his hand, did he ever talk to you? He said my hair was like Lily's. I am the new Lily and Harry is the new James, we are the perfect Gryffindor couple. Harry rescued me, I was the damsel in distress and he came and slayed the beast and the evil wizard and rescued me. He is Prince Charming and I am his princess, we are now supposed to get married and live happily ever after. Draco told them, they made Harry go away, it's his fault, Ginny said. The unspeakable continued scanning Ginny. I am picking up a strange reading on her soul, it is similar to those who have been partially key-ed by Dementors and survive. He looked at them as if asking if it made sense. The book, the diary, Harry said Riddle had been feeding on her life force, Albus said more to himself. No, Tom was my friend. It was Draco, he is the snake. Tom is my friend, my only friend, he did not hurt me, he did not call the snake, he helped me get my Harry, he did the quest so Harry could rescue me so he could be my husband. Tom is my friend and he went away and Harry was supposed to be my husband and it is Draco's fault. Draco gave me the book and it wasn't Tom, it was the snake. Draco is a snake, he turned the book into the evil man, it wasn't Tom, it was the snake and Draco had the rat and it turned into an evil man. There was a snake, the snake is in the tank, it hissed and cast its spell, we are not safe. It is Draco's fault, he brought the snake, he made them hurt Harry and he made them hurt Percy. He brought the snake here, It is going to kill us all. We must kill the snake. We have to find Harry. He is the only one. Only he can kill the snake. Harry is the chosen one. It is his destiny. He has gone and now the snake will get us and kill us all," Ginny said, screaming once more. The unspeakable who had scanned her said, "This girl has been seriously traumatized. The scaring on her soul I have seen only in those who were in Azkaban, and her reaction and her statements are similar to those who were kidnapped and tortured. The incidents of today have triggered her trauma from before. She is mentally unstable. She needs the help of a mind healer or she will go crazy, and this boy would be the first of many." Fisher nodded and looked at Amelia. Amelia took Ginny from Minerva and said, "How about we go have a cup of tea? We need to kill the snake. It is in the tank. It would kill us," Ginny said, shaking. Severus whispered to Alex and told him to get the mamba corpse from his potions trunk. Alex nodded and told Amelia to bring Ginny outside. He ran out. Severus said, "Miss Weasley, Alex is going to kill the snake. Alex is a Gryffindor as well. Alex, Madam Bones, Auror Moody, Mr. Fisher, they are all Gryffindors and snake hunters. They would kill the snake." Amelia, Minerva, Albus, Alistair and Fisher walked out with Ginny, while Severus and the two unspeakables remained and worked on Draco. Outside they saw Arthur and Remus standing with Harry and the others around the table with the gifts. The dragons were not in sight. Alex stood to one side with the tank with the Merlin's mamba. Ginny looked on as Alex killed the snake and set it on fire, destroying it. Ginny smiled and hugged the man. "Okay, all is well now," Albus said. "All is not well," Minerva said. "She needs help. Ronald as well would need help. I will organize a mind healer to look at them both and the entire family as well," Amelia said. Albus shook his head. "The Weasleys are a good family. They would not need that kind of stigma attached to them." "I will do it discreetly, Albus. There would not be anything negative about the family going to a beach house for a month while on summer vacation followed by their trip to Egypt," Amelia said. Albus nodded and Amelia walked over to where Ginny was still clinging to Alex. Amelia got Ginny away from Alex and Albus indicated for Fred, George and Ron to follow him. They went inside. Alex looked at Minerva and said, "You all never provided counseling for her after what happened with the diary and the basilisk." Minerva shook her head. I didn't think. After you all found out about Harry's nightmares, you did not think the other victim of the basilisk needed counseling," Alex said angrily. Minerva shook her head. "She seemed fine," Albus said. "As the diary was destroyed she would be fine." "Did she sound as if she is fine? The girl was mentally abused by that thing for a year while at Hogwarts. She was almost killed. She may not have been say you ally violated, but her soul was violated and you did nothing to help her. Why didn't you pick up there was a dark magic soul draining object mentally assaulting a child in your house, and why didn't you pick up an illegal animagus that was sleeping in the dorms and had full access to your children? Who knows what he has been doing to the others? You are the head of Gryffindor House. Stop listening to Albus and start doing what is good for the children in your care," Alex said angrily. Minerva looked really guilty. She looked at Gideon who sat at the table with his gifts and had tears in her eyes. "Tell Albus I would take the job, but not just in defense against the dark arts but in defense against the horrors at Hogwarts," Alex said and walked off. Minerva stood almost frozen in her spot, and then Arthur came over and said, "Do not worry, all will be well. He is right. I should have known. I should have done something, not just Harry but for Ginny and Ronald, Hermione, Colin, all of the children. Severus was the one who picked up that Harry was abused. I had Harry in my care for almost 2 years and I didn't notice. Ginny was lonely and she wrote in the book that was stealing her soul for a year. Scabbers has been in Gryffindor Tower since Percy was in year 1, 6 years ago. He is a rat animagus. I am a cat animagus. I should have detected him. I am a terrible head of Gryffindor House," Minerva said with tears rolling down her eyes. "Well, it is a good thing you now have the Gryffindor brothers to help guide you," Arthur said. Black Warrior flew overhead and General Young roared. Gideon called out, "The elf warriors have arrived, Grandpa Arthur." He nodded and said, "Good, now we will go and take care of the first of the horrors of Hogwarts, her rat problem." Minerva couldn't help chuckle. Gideon was worried. He did not like Draco, but the screams were terrifying. He studied what Draco had gone through, how scared he must have been. He knew Lucius was a bastard who had tried to kill him, and Draco was a mini bastard being trained by his dad. Gideon looked up in the direction the screams had come from. No one deserved that pain. He would give Draco a chance. Arthur's voice pulled Gideon out of his musing. Come on, let's start opening some presents. This is from me and General Young, and I believe Louisa put something in there for you as well. Arthur indicated to the wooden chest. The chest itself is very nice, beautifully hand-carved, Gideon said. I had one of my best craftsmen make it, Arthur said. I could teach you if you wish. I do know how to make more than brooms, you know, Aiden's black warrior growled in dragonspeak. I would like that, Gideon said, and then opened the chest. In it was a large set of elven tunics, robes and boots. Wow, those are gorgeous, Susan said. Gideon held up a set of formal robes in red and gold made from what looked like dragon hide from a fireball. Ron looked at them jealously. So you would always be dressed like a prince, Arthur said, and Gideon thanked him. This looks like dragon hide. Did you have to kill a dragon to get it? Fred asked, looking at the robes in Gideon's hands. Black Warrior chuckled and General Young growled something. Arthur chuckled and said, no, every 500 years or so, adult dragons go through a molting as it were, and their hides are peeled off. Like a snake, Ron said in disgust, thinking of the shed skin of the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. Yes, similar to a snake. This hide actually came from General Young, and it is a great privilege. The last human he gave his hide to was Godric Gryffindor, Arthur said, and Gideon beamed and thanked the dragon, who nodded. You are so going into Gryffindor, Ron said. You are a descendant of Gryffindor and you have robes like Gryffindor. I don't know. My dad says I have the qualities of more than one house. I don't mind being in Slytherin, Gideon said. Slytherins are all evil, Ron said quickly. Severus is a Slytherin, Gideon said angrily. And he is a... Ron started, and Fred put his hand over Ron's mouth. George asked Gideon to open the smaller chest that was in the bigger chest. Arthur smiled. This is from Louisa. Gideon opened the chest, and inside was a clear see-through ice sculpture of an owl. Is that ice? Susan said. Ice crystal. It is magical. It is made of ice, but a special type of ice. It is tied to the magic of the person who made it, which is my daughter, the elf princess Matharnell, who Alex calls Louisa. It would only melt if she dies or if her magic is destroyed, Arthur explained. It's beautiful, Susan said. It doesn't feel cold, Remus said, holding it. No, it feels like magic, Gideon said as Remus gave him back. Elf magic, more precisely Louisa's magic, Arthur said. Gideon put it aside and Arthur moved the chest aside, and then they started opening some more presents. Susan had given Gideon a book on defense, and she told him it was an Auror-level book that is used in the academy. Gideon smiled. Most of the Hogwarts professors gave him books for their various subjects, except for Minerva, who gave him swim trunks, goggles, flip-flops and a towel. Okay, that is odd, George said, looking at the swimming things. Gideon chuckled. One of the things Minerva had shown Gideon at Hogwarts was a swimming pool that was only for staff members that none of the students knew about. It's something between Auntie Minerva and me. Gideon opened Hermione's gift. It was a copy of Hogwarts: A History. He chuckled. It was so like Hermione. You were laughing at Hermione's gift. Do you know how expensive that book is? Ron said angrily. I was not laughing at the gift. I was chuckling at a funny memory that came to me as I saw the book. Are you always so angry all the time and so uptight? Gideon asked, annoyed. Ron got angry and walked off. Black Warrior growled a bit and Gideon sighed and lowered his head. Fred said, he just misses his friend and it's been a hard couple of days and now Scabbers. Gideon nodded and George said he would get Ron. Gideon opened a few more things. He got 2 sets of the same Quidditch board game and 2 copies of a few books. He asked Fred if they would like one of the board games and the boy smiled and thanked him. Maybe we could all play later, Remus said, and the others nodded. George came back with Ron. Ron handed Gideon the present that had fallen when he first came and ran after Scabbers. Here, happy birthday. Gideon opened it and saw it was a dream journal. A dream journal, thank you very much. I know it is very plain, Ron said apologetically and embarrassed. It has a lot of potential, Arthur said. The beautiful thing about a plane surface is that it can be designed to suit the needs of the person getting the gift. We can now add to it, Arthur said and growled something and the fireball growled back. He told Ron to get something from General Yong. Ron hesitantly went over and the dragon lifted him so Ron could reach the upper part of the dragon's sides. Pluck out one of the golden scales, Arthur said. How do I do that? Ron asked. Why don't you show him Gideon? Arthur said and Gideon went over and expertly climbed onto General Yang's back and took out his wand and showed him the spell and took out one. Arthur told Ron to try it. Ron was hesitant but did. Okay, now you two bring the scales, Arthur said. Gideon expertly climbed down and General Yang lowered Ron. They brought the scales. Now Gideon, can you do your own symbol? Arthur asked and Black Warrior growled and both Gideon and Arthur rolled their eyes. Gideon put the scale on the plain journal and using his wand transfigured the scale into a dragon which looked like a golden version of Black Warrior. It was Golden Heart. Okay Ronald, what is your symbol? Arthur said. For myself. Ron asked. Yes, what symbol represents you? Arthur asked. I am a Gryffindor, so a lion, but I don't know if I could do what he did, Ron said. You could do it, Ron, just believe you could, Fred said. We know you could do it, we have faith in you, George said. Ron nodded and took a breath and put his wand and transfigured the scale into something. It wasn't a lion. Ron looked disappointed. Black Warrior growled and Arthur said, that is a griffin, for which the Gryffindors are named. Gideon smiled and said, Godric was a lion and a magi, so the symbol of his house is a lion. However, the symbol of the Gryffindor family is a griffin. It is most appropriate, Ronald, as it not only shows your symbol for yourself but it shows my symbol for my family. Black Warrior growled for a while and Arthur said, Black Warrior said that there is a possibility that the Weasleys could be related to the Gryffindors. He said that if you trace the ancestry of many whose family are from Britain, they could be related in one way or the other to one of the founders. Or it could just mean that you have the heart of a Gryffindor. Ron beamed. Arthur then said, okay, let's put these together and position it on the journal. They put the griffin and the dragon together and Gideon did the spell and attached the two onto the plain journal. The journal no longer looked plain, it looked exquisite and expensive. Now that is beautiful, Susan said. And a unique and priceless gift, Arthur said. It misses one thing, Gideon said, and he used his wand and in gold wrote his name on the bottom. Now this is the perfect gift. Thank you, Ronald. Remus smiled and said, it is a gift of friendship. He knew Gideon was Harry and that Harry missed his friend as well. Before anyone said anything else, Alex came out with the tank with Snake. Black Warrior growled and Gideon shouted, you killed the snake. Papa. Good, Ron said, and both Fred and George shook their heads and both tapped Ron behind his head. No, I did not kill your snake. This is an already dead Merlin's Mamba corpse that Severus had for potions, Alex said and explained what happened upstairs and what they were going to do. Arthur stood and growled something and the dragons walked off a bit and flew off. If she is traumatized, the sight of the dragons might make it worse. Remus nodded. Ginny came out with the others and they all watched as Alex killed and destroyed the snake and tank. Remus looked at Gideon, who looked upset. Dumbledore took the Weasleys inside. Gideon sat with Susan, Arthur and Remus at the table. They heard Alex yelling at Minerva. Well, that is not fair. Professor McGonagall is a good witch who tries, she is not to blame. Even my Aunt Amelia did not pick up on the fact that Pettigrew was alive, Susan said, scowling. He is just frustrated, Arthur said, and after Alex went to speak to Minerva. There was a roar and Gideon and Susan looked over and saw that about a dozen elf warriors had arrived. Gideon called out and told Arthur and then went over to one of the elves he recognized. It was the battle maiden Princess Matharinel, who looked really odd in her all white in this environment. Arthur came over and looked at her. I did not expect to see you here, daughter. I am not staying. I came to deliver one of the warriors and to speak with Alex and Severus, she said. Deliver one of the warriors? Gideon asked. She opened her cloak and they saw a white snowy owl with minty green and silver markings along her face and several of her back and wing feathers of molten silver. The owl was holding on to a special holder in Louise's cloak. Elf travel portals are uncomfortable the first time. Hedwig, is that you? You are so gorgeous, Gideon said, looking at the majestic-looking owl. The owl hooted and flew into Gideon's arms. Well, she can no longer go by that name now, can she? Alex said, coming over. He looked and saw that Susan was still at the table with the gifts, looking at the powerful elf warriors in shock and awe. She was too far to hear Gideon call the owl Hedwig. Minerva had come over, but it was okay, she knew who Gideon had been. Well, the elf translation of Hedwig is Gothweniel, Arthur suggested. Gideon shook his head. Someone like Hermione or Lucius would figure it out. What have you been calling her? Louisa said. Huntress. She is quite a skilled huntress as well as being a battle maiden. She is very intelligent for her kind, and I know she would be a perfect protector for you, Prince Gideon. Alex looked at Minerva and then said, how about Athena? Gideon said, you mean like the Roman goddess? Alex frowned. Greek goddess, I have to see about improving your education. Her Roman counterpart was Minerva, a goodly woman who was not only a powerful witch but was wise and most beloved by those she protected. He looked at Minerva, who gave him a nod and a smile. She accepted his somewhat very hidden apology. Alex gave a nod and turned back to Gideon. Athena was the goddess of war, wisdom and craft, and was the guide and companion of heroes. Her symbols included the owl and a snake, and was known to wield a lightning bolt like her father Zeus. He gave Gideon a meaningful look. Arthur nodded. Athena was a wonderful woman. She was a battle maiden and princess like Matharinel, and was a powerful witch. She was an air elemental and could produce lightning bolts. I remember there was this one battle. Wait, you knew her? Gideon said in shock. Yes, I did. Her father Zeus and my father were friends. If she did not decide to become a battle maiden, I might have married her instead of my wife Luthien. Not that I regret marrying my wife. I love my wife and we have had a long and happy life together, but Athena was a special woman in my early life. She was actually the one who gave me the silver oak tree. She planted it herself in the garden. Everyone, including his daughter, looked at him in shock. He cleared his throat. I think Athena is a wonderful name for you, little huntress. The owl hooted and Gideon held her lovingly and said, Athena it is. Speaking of the silver oak tree, Alex Ignotus Gryffindor, I must speak with you and your husband immediately, Louisa said seriously. Alex gulped. She sounded serious. Alex looked at Gideon and said, why don't you go and put your presents away? Minerva said she would help him and Alex nodded. Alex led the way inside where Albus, Amelia, Mad-Eye, Fisher and the Weasleys were. Amelia and Ginny were sitting on a couch and Ginny seemed to be crying. Fred and George were talking with Ron and Albus was talking with Mad-Eye. They all turned and looked at the elf princess in pure white with molten silver hair in amazement. She looked ethereal and powerful. Alex introduced her to the adults and they bowed. And where is your husband? She asked. Husband? Ginny said angrily, looking over at Alex. You are a Gryffindor warrior, you are supposed to marry a princess. He married a prince, Louisa said, looking at the girl. Alex spoke to Louisa rapidly in Elfish. She nodded and she gave a graceful nod to the others and Alex directed her to his office. Gideon came in chatting with Remus and Susan. Remus had the wooden chest that Arthur had given Harry, Susan had the ice sculpture and Gideon had Athena on his shoulder. Minerva was behind them levitating a large leaf-looking basket with the remaining gifts. As soon as Ginny saw the owl she screamed, Hedwig. They all turned and looked at Gideon with the snowy owl on his shoulder. Ron looked at them. That is Hedwig. No, it is not. That owl has silver and green markings on its face, Fred said. That is Hedwig, I know Hedwig when I see her, Ron said angrily. Owl, Hedwig. This is my owl Athena, Gideon said. That is Hedwig, Ginny screamed, and before Amelia could stop her ran over towards Gideon. The owl on Gideon's shoulder reacted and hooted threateningly. She spread out her right wing and everyone saw the molten silver feathers. As Ginny got nearer, the owl moved her wing up and then down sharply. The silvery feathers at the very end of her wings moved down to look like she had wing tips that were blades. It was obvious she was going to attack Ginny if she got too close. That is definitely not Hedwig, George said. Amelia ran forward and grabbed Ginny before the owl attacked. It's Hedwig. Harry sent Hedwig to me. She must have a letter for me, Ginny screamed and tried to fight Amelia to get to the bird. Fred and George came over and said, Ginny, it is not Hedwig. See, Hedwig didn't have silvery feathers. Alex had come out of the office, as did Louisa. Louisa whistled and the owl flew off Gideon's shoulder, and they all saw the shimmering silver mirror-like feathers twist and reflect what was around, and the bird disappeared. She is perfectly camouflaged, Fisher said in wonder. She reflects the images around her, Mad Eye said. They saw the owl as she reappeared on Louisa's shoulder. She had the same look like the princess, a fierce warrior not to be messed with. No need to ask where Gideon got her, Fred said to George. The owl looked at them with a haughty look, and Louisa pet her and walked back into the office. Hedwig, Ginny screamed. Hedwig probably left with Harry, Ron said more to himself. The owl did not survive the fire, Mad Eye said. He knew Gideon was Harry and had taken oaths with Amelia not to say anything, not even to Albus, who knew. Gideon looked at Ginny, who wept bitterly. He took the owl ice sculpture from Susan. Ginny, this is for you. This is Hedwig, and she is a very good friend. Whenever you think of your Harry and want to talk to him or just need anyone to talk to, you can talk to her. Ginny looked at the ice owl and smiled. Thank you. She held the ice crystal owl lovingly. Amelia nodded and then looked at Alex and said, We were waiting on you. You raised a ward that is preventing us from leaving. We need to get Portkeys to go to St. Mungo's. Alex nodded and immediately did the password which would get them off the island. Ginevra is an emergency. Ronald, Fred and George seem fine for now. Do you mind if they stay at least until the morning? Albus asked. Alex shook his head. No, I don't. We have the room. After St. Mungo's we will be going to Azkaban, so Remus, I think you should come with us now, Albus said. Remus nodded and gave Alex the chest he was holding. Albus looked at Ginny and then at the three Weasleys and smiled. All will be well. They nodded. Albus, Amelia, Ginny and Remus left. Alex looked at Fisher and said, Arthan's warriors have arrived. They are outside. Fisher nodded and he and Mad Eye went out. Alex sent a message telepathically to Aiden and then one to Gideon. Gideon asked Fred, George and Ron if they wanted to come up to his room with him. They nodded and followed Gideon and Susan to the stairs to the bedrooms. Alex took the chest up and put it inside Gideon's room. He then left the room. Gideon knew he was going to get his dad and go to talk with Louisa. Minerva put the presents down on the bed and said she was going to get the guest bedrooms ready. She too left. Gideon started sorting the presents and the others looked at the fantastic bedroom. It was done in blue and had a sitting area, a library study area, a play area and the actual bed area. In between the desk in the study area and the play area there was an ornate shelf with knickknacks from all over the world. Ron looked at the shelf and picked up the snow globe. Susan came and stood next to Ron and looked at the snow globe. This is nice. What town is it? Susan asked. That is the goblin village of Nimwin, Gideon said without looking up. It's really pretty, Susan said looking at it. And what is this? Ron said picking up what looked like a pan flute made out of a seashell. That is a hydra flute. You play it in the water and the hydra will come, Gideon said. Ron put it down and then looked over and saw the blue doll with the snake around its neck. He sneered. Gideon smiled and said, That is Shiva, he is my most valued item. He was made by Salazar Slytherin himself. Really? Susan said intrigued. Ron sneered at it and moved away. Was that Salazar's as well? Fred said pointing to the green and silver armor that was magically standing against the wall along with the sword and short knives that were mounted against the wall. The armor was Gideon's size. Gideon shook his head. No, it is mine. He did not want to reveal he had the armor of Slytherin or Voldemort, and his minions would definitely want to hunt him down. It's green and silver like something a Slytherin would wear, Ron said. Contrary to popular belief, the world is not divided into four. You are allowed to wear green and not be a Slytherin, Gideon said. The sword has a snake on it, George said. I know. I like snakes. I am really hoping Papa allows me to have the Merlin's Mamba. My heart skipped a beat when he came out with the dead one, Gideon said. How can you like snakes and be a Gryffindor? The snake is the enemy of Gryffindors, Ron said. Harry Potter liked snakes and he was in Gryffindor, Gideon said. Harry Potter hated snakes. He killed that disgusting snake that tried to kill my sister, and he would have killed any snake he saw. It was not his fault he was cursed. He fought the curse and wanted nothing to do with snakes. He was a good person, Ron screamed. Gideon was annoyed. He told me he liked snakes. When I spoke to him. What do you know about Harry Potter? You spoke to him for 5 minutes. I was his best friend and he considered me his brother. I knew him better than anyone. He was probably forced to say he liked snakes because that slimy git Snape was around. Gideon stood up. Severus Snape is a good man and he is not slimy or a git. I will not have you saying anything bad about him. I know what Harry Potter told me. He told me that he had a lot of fun with not only the Slytherins but with the snakes who he spent time with translating for their owners. He told me that he couldn't say that he liked snakes in Gryffindor house because of his friend who was snake-phobic and who attacked him because he even spoke to Slytherins. He liked snakes. He loved being a Parselmouth, going into the chamber and talking with the Slytherin statue and translating all of the parcel script work. He said it was one of the things he was going to miss about Hogwarts. Ron stormed out of the room and slammed the door. Fred shook his head and told George to just leave Ron. Gideon looked at the door and said out loud, I just don't know if we could be friends or not. Believe it or not, he is trying, Fred said. Gideon chuckled. You went with Charlie to drop Harry to his new home? George asked. I spent a few days at Hogwarts this summer with Severus. I was there before Harry left, Gideon said, and the others nodded. Harry will return one day when it is safe, Fred said, and Gideon just nodded. Susan looked at a few things on the shelf. She picked up some shimmering stones in a basket. These look like opals, she said in shock. Yeah, we got those in Australia. I got this as well. Gideon showed her the boomerang and then the dream catcher. Where did you get these? Fred and George pointed to a shelf with model boats. This one is from Greece, this one is from Australia, this one from Peru, this one is from Mexico, this is from India, and this one is from Scotland. My papa actually made them. The wood is from trees from places we have been, Gideon said. And these two, Fred and George pointed. One was from a tree in Lady Ariel's garden and the other was from Shangri-La. Classified, Gideon said with a grin. There was a knock on the door and Minerva came in with a tray of drinks. The guest rooms are all prepared. Where is Ronald? Minerva asked. Stormed off somewhere, Gideon said as he took the tray from her. Minerva sighed and said she would find him and walked back out. Gideon put the tray on his desk and was about to ask them for help packing some of the gifts when he felt a rush of magic. He fell back and sat on the ground. Fred and George rushed to him and Susan asked, Are you okay? Strong wave of magic, my papa, he just received some good news I think, Gideon said. They probably caught scab, Pettigrew, George said. Gideon shook his head, it's something more. The door opened and Minerva brought in an angry-looking Ron. She told them she had to leave the island and get a few things and she would return in an hour or two and to behave, and left once more. Ron glared at Gideon and said, Your dad is Severus Snape. The others gasped. Gideon sighed. Ron would never be friends with him now. He was about to reply when he heard his papa's voice in his mind. The others in the room saw the boy smile broadly and start to glow, and he ran out of the room laughing. Okay, what just happened? Fred said. I don't know, Fred, that boy confuses me, George said. When Alex came to him saying that Louisa was here and he wanted to see them both, Severus was a bit apprehensive. But he did not want to leave Draco's side. Alex frowned and said, Severus, whatever it is she left Shangri-La for. Draco is asleep, he will be fine. Severus nodded and went with Alex. They were almost to the office door when Severus stopped Alex and said, Do you think she heard about the trial and wants back the leaves? I already ground one into powder. Alex chuckled and said, She gave the leaves freely. If she wanted them back, Arthur would have said so. Now whatever it is, we are in it together. Severus nodded and Alex bent down and keyed him deeply. Severus melted into the key asterisk. He needed it and he felt Alex's magic engulf him and calm him. When they pulled away, Severus rested his head on Alex's shoulder. A door slammed and both Alex and Severus looked in the direction of the door and shook their heads. Alex held Severus' hand. As Alex opened the door, Severus looked back and saw Ronald looking at them from the top of the stairs. Severus shook his head and followed Alex into the room. Louisa was looking at the pictures on Alex's desk. She had the Merlin's mamba in her hand and she was stroking it. Severus heard an excited hoot and turned and saw a silvery owl coming towards him. "Hedwig," he said, and she flew to his shoulder and affectionately snipped his ear. "She is now called Athena," Louisa said, standing up and putting the snake back in its tank. "You know those things are poisonous," Alex said, looking at the mamba. "Only to those who attack them. However, you do remember I am immune to snake bites. Your Uncle Salazar's potion still grants me immunity," Louisa said. Alex nodded and said, "You wanted to see us both." She gestured to them to sit and they both sat on a couch that was to one side. She remained standing and looked at them both, particularly Severus. Severus felt as if they were in the headmaster's office and was waiting on a scolding. "Did we do something wrong?" She looked at them and asked bluntly, "Did you two have say under my sacred tree?" They both blushed fiery red, which gave Louisa her answer. Severus looked at Alex and then at Louisa, but then lowered his head. Alex looked at her. "Is the tree fine? It did not die or wither." He knew the battle maidens were all pures and the tree was sacred to them. She looked at them and said, "No, it did not, but you should have known better, Alex Gryffindor." "I am sorry, we meant no disrespect," Severus said. She nodded and said, "Have you been ill recently, Severus?" "Ill, no. Am I cursed?" Severus said anxiously. Alex immediately stood up. "Louisa, please, if anyone is to be punished it should be me. I know the rules of the garden and I am the one who released into your husband. If your seed did fall onto the ground the tree may have died, but as it is it did not," Louisa said. She sighed and said, "You are not cursed, Severus, nor are you two to be punished. If it is as I suspect, you were blessed." They both looked at her confused. She looked at Severus and said, "Come to me." Severus looked at Alex, who nodded. He stood up and she put her staff on his head. She started chanting and Alex saw Severus glow. She moved the staff and nodded. She reached into her pocket and took out something. "I do believe this is for you." Severus looked at it. It was a green acorn. Alex stepped forward and looked at the acorn in Severus' hand. "It's green." "Yes, it is," Louisa said. "Is this from the tree?" Severus asked. "Yes, it is," Louisa answered. "I thought all the acorns from the tree were silver." "They normally are," Louisa said. "So why is it green?" Alex asked. "Because the maiden it is for has not yet been born," she answered. The two of them looked at her in confusion and then saw her look down at Severus' stomach. Severus shouted, "I'm pregnant." "You're pregnant," Alex shouted out. Louisa nodded. Alex started to glow in happiness and grabbed onto Severus and gave him a deep key. After they pulled out, Severus looked at Alex and said, "You really do love me." "Was there any doubt?" Alex said and keyed him again. There was a knock and Arthur opened the door. "We are ready to leave." "Alex, time to go." "What, no, you can't leave me now," Severus said, looking at Alex. "Okay, why not?" Arthur said with a frown. There was a happy squeal and Gideon rushed past the Elf King and ran into the room and hugged Severus. "Congratulations." Severus looked at Alex, who said, "It was hard to keep it a secret." "Keep what a secret?" Arthur asked. Aiden came into the room laughing and picked up Alex and spun him around. "This was worth being frozen 1,000 years for. Aren't you supposed to be in dragon form right now?" Arthur said with hands on his hips. "Ah, they were going to find out when we reached Albania anyway," Aiden said dismissively and then released his brother and went over and hugged Severus. "Okay, someone wants to tell me what is going on," the Elf King said, getting annoyed. Louisa told him in Elvish and the man laughed out and hugged both Severus and Alex. There was another knock and Fisher came in and said, "Sorry to disturb whatever celebrations you are obviously having, but it is starting to get dark and we are all anxious to go." Alex looked at Severus and said, "I will be back soon and we would really celebrate. We would also go on that honeymoon I promised you." Severus nodded and keyed him again. Alex nodded and keyed the top of Gideon's head and told him he loved him and to not give his dad any trouble. Fisher looked at Aiden and said, "You're Aiden, aren't you?" Aiden laughed and said, "Yes, come on, I am sure you have plenty of questions." The others left and only Severus, Gideon and Louisa remained. Louisa looked at Severus and said, "I must return to the elf realm soon as it is currently unguarded. However, there is something I need to teach you." There was a loud scream for Severus. Severus looked up. Draco, he is awake. Please, I must go to him. Severus excused himself and left the room. Louisa looked at Gideon. Draco. Severus' godson. A pain in the ass spoilt brat, he said, and told her what happened earlier, and he even told her about Ginny and him giving her the crystal owl. Athena hooted in approval and landed on his shoulder and gave his ear an affectionate nip. Come, let's go and see this dragon, Louisa said. They walked out of the office and went upstairs. They saw the Weasleys and Susan standing at the top of the stairway, almost unsure of where to go. Louisa looked at the three boys and then at Susan. She looked at Susan and then put her staff on her head and then nodded. You are a powerful warrior, but you are not a battle maiden, you have a soul mate. She turned to Gideon and said, when you come to train with us, bring her, she can learn a lot from us. Gideon looked at Susan and smiled and then back to Louisa, thank you. She nodded and started to walk out. Gideon took Louisa to the room that Draco was using. He then excused himself and went to show the others where the guest rooms were. Louisa went into the room and looked at the crying boy who Severus was holding. Draco looked at the woman who entered the room. She stared at him and then after a minute she asked, are you related to Malfoy? I am Draco Malfoy, Draco answered. Draco Malfoy, she said, stressing the Draco. Yes, ma'am, Draco answered. She was quiet for a few minutes and then nodded and said, Severus, a goblet of water please, from the well please. Severus went and got a goblet of water. Louisa said nothing to Draco while Severus went for the water, and neither did the boy fuss. She passed her staff over him as if assessing the damage done to him. Severus came back and said, his father will be here in a few minutes. He is bringing someone I asked to stay with us for a few days. She nodded but said nothing. She took the goblet and dipped her finger in it and put her finger in her mouth, tasting the water. She nodded and then closed her eyes. She chanted over the water in Elvish and the water glowed. She then raised her hand and the water rose out of the goblet, and both Severus and Draco saw it take the form of wolf, with a tail longer than what would be on a normal wolf. Then the water wolf sprouted wings like a dragon. She opened her eyes and then blew on it. Her breath was white and misty as if it was a snowy day outside. The watery winged wolf slowly hardened and became ice. She held it in her hand and chanted, and the ice sculpture became like crystal. She handed him the sculpture and said, this is for you. Draco held it and said, what is it? It is a dragon wolf. It is a Draco Malfoy. She said with a smile and walked off and said, I have a lot to teach you, Severus, and must return soon. Severus looked at Draco, who was holding the statue, lovingly. There was a peaceful look on the boy's face. He told him he was going to be with Louisa for a while, and Draco nodded and said he was okay. She took Severus to his lab and asked him for the silver leaves. He brought them and she nodded when he showed her the one he ground into powder. She taught him a potion using the leaves and told him it was a sacred potion that he was never to teach. She gave him to drink it and told him it would help him and his baby. She told him he was to make it and take it once a month every month until the baby was born. She told him it was elf magic and it would help strengthen his womb and magic. She told him he would become more powerful, however it was to help him protect his baby. He nodded. She then made a healing potion which was similar to one Severus normally made. She however crushed instead of diced and used phoenix tears instead of aloe extract, and she added a small pinch of the ground silvery leaves. She chanted and sang in Elvish while she made it. The song was sung over and over and she nodded to him and he joined her in singing, and she nodded as he got the words. She had him stir and take over. When it was finished she told him that music was the language of magic. She then told him that the potion was for Draco. When they left the lab they saw Walter McNair sitting on the couch, looking uncomfortable. He stood up and said, Professor, Mr. Malfoy said you asked for me. He brought me here. No one came, so I sat here. That is okay, Walter. I am sorry. He told me that he was bringing you. I forgot to tell Gideon, and I believe Minerva went out for an hour or two or she would have been here, Severus said. Severus, give this boy the goblet and get another for Draco, Louisa said. I am sorry, Princess Matharinel, this is Walter McNair, one of my students, Severus said. Walter bowed and said to her in Elvish, it is my greatest honor to be in your presence, my lady warrior and protector. She smiled and nodded and said in Elvish, You are a good boy and have a good heart. Stay to what you know is right and you would be a fierce warrior. I am sure we will meet again. She looked at Severus and said in English, I must go. I have been away too long and the sun will rise soon on my land. He nodded and bowed low and thanked her for her aid and her knowledge and for her blessings. She nodded and then said, next time there is a nice spot by the river. He blushed and apologized. She reached over and kissed him on his forehead and said, you were blessed by the gods, who am I to speak against it? She left. Severus looked at Walter and said, are you well, Walter? As I could be, he said wearily. Severus handed him the potion and told him to drink it. Walter obeyed and smiled and told him he felt better. He still looked weary. Come, let me get you somewhere to rest. Severus took him up to the second floor where the guest bedrooms were. He heard the loud shouting coming from one of the rooms. He opened the door and saw Ron and Gideon fighting. Fred and George were trying to pull them apart. He reached forward and expertly pulled them apart. Gideon, Severus said sternly. He said you were a slimy git who deserved to die and that you must be recruiting Papa for some evil, Gideon said. Severus sighed and said, you know the state Ginny is in, yes? Gideon looked at him and nodded, yes sir. Now you know Ronald is close to that state and is not of a right mind, Severus said. What do you mean not in a right mind, you slimy bastard? Ron shouted and Fred and George immediately grabbed him and George covered Ron's mouth and Fred apologized and said he didn't mean it. Severus nodded and told Gideon to take Walter to one of the guest rooms and then to start preparing for bed. Gideon looked around and said, Wally is here. He sprinted out of the room. Severus looked at Fred and said, come, I will get you a dreamless sleep potion for him, it may calm him and get him some rest. Fred nodded and left the room with him while George held their angry brother. He saw Susan peeping out of a room and she asked if everything was okay. He nodded and she closed the door. Fred said nothing and followed Severus to the lab. Fred looked at the two potions that had been recently made, one was shimmering white, the other looked like light silver. Severus went to a cupboard and took out a vial and handed it to Fred, who was looking at the shimmering white potion. To his shock, Fred said, it smells like a healing potion, but there is a strange scent I cannot identify and the healing potion does not shimmer. I am surprised, Mr. Weasley, you do not show such adeptness in class, Severus said. Yes, well, no offense, but your classes doesn't have anything interesting. Everything you teach we could get from a book, Fred said, and Severus nodded. It has a rare elf healing ingredient in it, Severus said, and Fred nodded. Severus told him to give the sleeping potion to Ron. Fred nodded and Severus poured the rest of the white potion into a goblet and took it for Draco, who was still holding the ice sculpture. Draco drank it and was soon asleep. Severus knew the healing potion would put him in a deep sleep until he was healed. He heard Minerva's voice and she came into the room. I had to just buy new clothes for them all. The Aurors locked down the burrow. Severus nodded and directed her out of the room. Did anything happen while I was gone? Minerva asked. Severus laughed out loudly. Molly sat looking at Percy, who was lying on the bed. Part of his face was bandaged and every so often his body twitched. She felt a hand on her shoulder and without looking up she knew it was Arthur. The healer says that there is nothing they could do again. We will just have to wait and see, Arthur said sadly. Percy is strong, he is a Gryffindor after all, Molly said. Arthur smiled. Yes, he has certainly proven that today. They had all had their doubt. Percy used to act so Slytherin at times. Yes, he is a hero. He saved that slimy good-for-nothing son of a snake, Molly said, and then burst into tears. Arthur, it's not fair. First Harry and now Percy. Those Slytherin bastards, it's because of them that the world is in the mess it is in. They destroy everything good in the world and then sit in their fancy manners and watch us suffer. That boy, he tried to kill Harry and then tricks our Ronald into telling him where Harry lived. Molly, you know Ron. No, Ronald is a good boy. He is a Gryffindor. He is destined to be a strong Gryffindor warrior of light. He has proven himself. He got that award for service to the school. Harry chose him to be his friend. You know Harry is the new Godric Gryffindor. Ronald is a good boy. He was tricked. That boy, his father is training him in dark magic and you know it. They lied and schemed their way out of Azkaban. There is not a witch or wizard who went into Slytherin who didn't go dark and you know it. That boy is a Slytherin. He tricked Ronald. It should have been him lying in this bed. Not my baby. They are all evil snakes. It should have been him here, not my baby, Molly said and stood up and ran her hand through Percy's hair. The door opened and Charlie came in. He put his backpack on the ground. I came as soon as I heard. How is he? Arthur patted his shoulder. It's touch and go. His jaw and nose are broken, few ribs, his hands. They had to regrown his liver and kidney. They saw Percy twitch again. Cruciatus, the healer says we just have to wait and see. They have put him in a healing coma. It would probably take a week for them to remove and regrow everything. They of course started with the critical things. As for his mind, according to Draco. Do not mention that boy's name in front of me, Arthur, Molly screamed. Arthur sighed. According to reports, Percy was lucid up until the Aurors came. So the healers say that is a good sign, but you never know. Charlie nodded and then whispered, I heard that it was Scabbers, that he was a Death Eater in disguise. Arthur nodded and said, Peter Pettigrew. Charlie looked at him and whispered, Dad, he lived with us for almost 12 years, he slept in Percy's room. If he was an animagus. Arthur nodded. I know, son, I know, I don't know if I would ever sleep again. I had the healers check, Percy was never, he was never. Charlie whispered, Ginny. Arthur looked like he was going to throw up and took off his glasses and knelt down on the ground. Charlie put his hand on his father's shoulder. The door opened and Albus came in. Arthur, Molly, we have an emergency, it's Ginny. Molly screamed and Arthur leapt up looking as if he was going to kill. They ran out of the room. Charlie looked at Albus and said, Pettigrew. No, but the trauma of this morning was too much, and after everything that happened over the last year, she snapped. She almost killed Draco Malfoy. Albus let out a breath and then said, at least Harry is safe. Charlie looked at him. Yes, and how is Gideon? Gideon is well. His parents had a birthday party for him, had dragon rides and lots of cake and ice cream and presents, Albus said with a smile. Severus is a good father. Both he and Alex are very good parents, Charlie said seriously. Yes, Gideon seems to be a well-adjusted and happy child. They are very good parents, Albus said smiling. Charlie looked at Albus strangely but nodded and walked out of the room to where Arthur and Molly were standing with Amelia. Charlie looked through the glass window and saw the healers holding down Ginny and administering a shot to the girl who was obviously screaming. Molly held a crystal owl in her hand and was absently stroking it. Charlie came up to them and heard his mother say, Good. Amelia looked at her in horror. Molly, did you understand what I told you? She tortured and could have killed a young boy. No, she punished a slimy no-good snake. That boy had it long in coming. My only regret is that Harry wasn't here to add a hex or two to that spoilt Slytherin brat, Molly said. Charlie shook his head. Mum, Slytherins are not the evil dark wizards you make them out to be. Most of them are good hard-working people. Severus is. Severus Snape is a Death Eater, and don't you forget it. If it wasn't for Albus monitoring him every moment, who knows what evil potions he would have created, Molly said. Amelia looked at Molly and then at Arthur, who was shaking his head. Remus had been standing at the side quietly and said, Molly, I know you blame them, but not all Slytherins are evil. Some like the Lestranges are evil, but Severus is a good man. Don't tell me they are not evil, Remus. Look at my child, my beautiful princess lying on that bed. My son is bandaged and twitching in the room next door, Molly said. Yes, but that was because of Peter, and he was a Gryffindor, Remus said. I saw them, Remus. They killed them. The dark mark was over my house, Remus, my house. I saw them. All Slytherins are evil, and I will not bury another family member, Remus. I will not, Molly said. Your brothers were good men, Molly, but not all Death Eaters were Slytherin, and not all Slytherins were Death Eaters. Draco is not a Death Eater. Severus is a good man, Remus said. Molly ignored them and walked to the glass window and said, Even if I have to personally kill every Slytherin in the world, I will not bury my children. Amelia sighed. She knew the woman was in shock. She touched her on her shoulder. No one is going to hurt your children, Molly. They are safe now. They were quiet for a minute and then they heard someone calling Charlie. They turned and saw Peyton Parkinson walking over. Mr. Parkinson, you look well. Totally healed, I see, Albus said. Yes, I am back to normal and Professor Snape said that he would have spoken to you. Peyton said. Yes, he did, and he spoke to your father as well. Everything is approved for you to repeat the year, Albus said with a smile. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate the second chance, Peyton said with a smile. Albus gave him a nod. Charlie looked at him. I thought you were going home. I did. I saw my parents and sister. They acted as if I had just come back from spending the weekend by my grandparents. Pansy was upset, of course. However, she was very happy to tell me that they were going to special wedding dinner tonight. Apparently my ex-fiancée Jessica is getting married in the morning, Peyton said. That was fast, Charlie said, and Peyton shrugged. I am so sorry to hear that, Mr. Parkinson, Albus said. It's okay. Ours was an arranged one. I had no feelings for her. So it really doesn't affect me, Peyton said. He, however, smiled at Charlie and asked him how his brother was doing. Albus, Remus and Arthur noticed the boy slipped his hand into Charlie's and Charlie gave it a reassuring squeeze. Molly saw it as well and her eyes narrowed and said, Parkinson, you are Philip Parkinson's son. Yes. You are a Slytherin? Molly asked, sounding as if she was going to explode. No, Peyton is a Ravenclaw, Albus said, lying quickly. As Molly turned to look at Albus, Arthur used his wand and turned the boy's green t-shirt to blue. Molly looked at Peyton and nodded and smiled. Yes, that is good, you must come to dinner. Charlie, he looks like he hasn't had a good home-cooked meal in weeks. Yes, Peyton does look hungry. Charlie, why don't you take this nice young Ravenclaw and take him to get something to eat? Arthur said, giving Charlie a look. Yes, let's go, Charlie said and pulled the boy out. They first stopped by Percy's room and got Charlie's backpack and quickly left. Charlie held Peyton's hand securely. Amelia sighed and patted Arthur's shoulder sympathetically. Albus, Lupin, come on, we still have one more stop to make today, Amelia said and then sighed. After the crazy day we are having today, I think I need a large chocolate bar before I go to Azkaban. Both Albus and Remus pulled chocolate bars from their pockets and handed to her. She chuckled and took them both. Sirius Black counted the stones in his cell in Azkaban for the millionth time. He knew every crack, every tiny hole, every stain, every discoloration. He felt a sudden chill in his bones. Dementors. It was that time of day. He sighed and tried to turn into his animagus form. As a large grim-like dog, he wasn't affected by them as much. He tried. Today was not a good day and he failed. The eerie prison guards in the wizard prison of Azkaban beeped all of the happiness out of someone and left you remembering your worst memories. As they passed on their daily journey, Sirius braced for the torture. He heard the terrifying scream of Rabaston Lestrange followed by that of his brother Rudolphus. He heard his cousin Bellatrix cackling laugh. She was now certifyingly insane. She then cried. Sirius hated to hear her cry. It hurt his heart more than if he heard her screaming. He knew exactly what she experienced when the Dementors neared her and she cried. Unknown to many, she had been 4 months pregnant when she entered Azkaban. On her first night here, she lost her baby. Sirius cursed every time he thought of it. Had the authorities done what they were supposed to do, they would have had her in another facility until she had her baby. However, they disregarded all protocol and did not even examine her or listen to her pleas and threw her in here. Sirius felt sorry for her and her husband Rudolphus, who had not been able to even hold her hand or give her any physical comfort. He was in the cell next to her, close enough to hear her screams and her cries, but he could not see or touch her. It was more torture than the Dementors. Sirius sighed. The baby would have been entering Hogwarts this year. He felt the coldness of the Dementor magic as it reached out to him. Sirius had many bad memories, most of them growing up as a teen. However, if he had to admit it, he had been a git. The Dementors stood in front of his cell door and Sirius felt them reaching out to him. They seemed to probe his mind, and today his memory was of him at age 16 leading Severus Snape to the werewolf Moony. He saw the terrified expression on Severus' face. He did not scream, he did not shout, he just looked at the memory. Long after the Dementors left, Sirius thought about the incident. It had been a prank. One that almost got a boy killed. They had hated Severus, he sighed. No, he had hated Severus. When he was 11 and had been sorted into Gryffindor house and not Slytherin, his parents had come and demanded a resorting. Dumbledore had refused and actually so had the sorting hat. When his parents had heard that the half-blood son of the disgraced Eileen Prince had gotten into Slytherin, they were appalled. Their son and heir was judged as being less worthy than a mudblood. His parents and family had often compared him to Severus, and his own jealousy had grown. He had often thought about why he had led Severus to the werewolf, and he knew it was the simple fact that he had wanted him killed. Severus had topped the class at Owls with 10 O's and Sirius had only gotten 8 O's. Sirius had been beaten almost every day after the results had come out and told how much of a disgrace he had been. James had rescued him. He went to live with the Potters and his parents pretended he had died. It had hurt and he blamed Severus. He had wanted him dead. It was for that incident at the Shrieking Shack that Sirius believed fate had put him in Azkaban. Not only had he almost gotten Severus killed, but his best friend Remus. Remus in his werewolf state had no control, he was a wild animal. Remus had once said that he counted on his friends to keep him human, to help control Moony and to stop him from hurting others. Sirius had betrayed that trust. Had Moony damaged Severus or worst killed him, they would have executed him. Sirius sighed. He had almost killed 2 people that day, Severus and Remus. He was just as bad as that rat Peter. Sirius thought about his friends. His thoughts went on James and Lily and little Harry. Peter had betrayed them to Voldemort and had destroyed their lives. He thought of Harry. He would be almost a teenager now. He imagined a boy with messy black hair and emerald green eyes. A miniature James, chasing girls, flying his broom, harassing Remus. He smiled. He knew Remus had to have Harry and they lived in that nice little cottage Remus, Mum had. She baked the nicest cookies. He imagined Harry getting into all sorts of trouble, climbing trees and sneaking out of his room to go fishing and not doing his homework. Sirius snorted. Who was he kidding? Remus would have drilled Harry into doing homework. Remus was a bookworm who would have never left the library if it wasn't for Sirius and the full moon. His mind then imagined a miniature James with round nerdy glasses, who sat reading a book and who hated flying, who probably never even caught a fish and who talked about the amount of germs that a tree had. Sirius growled. He then thought about what life would have been like if he had just not gone after that rat. He sat back against the wall in his cell and silently wept. He heard Bella singing a lullaby. Sirius sighed. She would play house for a few hours and she would take her daughter Cassiopeia for a walk in the park and then a picnic. It was heartbreaking really, but Bella's deranged mind actually allowed her to escape this dreary place. Sirius heard Rudolphus sob. It was the only time the powerful man would break down. They had done a lot of bad things in their lives, but they had paid dearly for it in Azkaban. 12 years was a long time to suffer in this place. As far as Sirius was concerned, they were the prisoners who had remained the longest in here. He remembered young Barty Crouch. He did not even last 6 months. Wilkes had lasted 2 years. The Indian Maharaj had lasted 6. 12 years was more than a lifetime in this place. Sirius heard Rabastan trying to comfort his brother, but Bella shouted to them and told them they would wake the baby. Rudolphus sobbed even more. Sirius sighed and said out loud, "What baby?" "Bella. Cassie is a big girl. Rudy, didn't you tell me that you saw the Hogwarts owl with a letter for her?" Bella shouted. "What? Rudolphus, you did not tell me about the owl. Cassie, at Hogwarts. Oh Rudy, we have to go to Diagon Alley. She will need a wand and new robes, and oh, we must have Alejandro Twilfit make her an entire new wardrobe." Rabastan on the other side of his brother shouted, "Twilfits, don't be daft, woman. She is a Lestrange. We will take her to Paris to shop. She will have her wardrobe made by Richelieu's. My goddaughter must have the best." Sirius smiled as they all left Azkaban and got beeped into Bella's dream world. "Yes, well, make sure and buy her some red and gold because little Cassie is Gryffindor bound for sure. Do not make me hex you, Siri. She will wear green and silver." "Thank you very much," Bella said. "You do remember that Crabbe and Goyle's sons are of age to be at Hogwarts," Sirius said. "Maybe blue and bronze to match her blue eyes and brown hair like her mummy," Rabastan said. "Ravenclaw. Blacks don't go into Ravenclaw," Bella said. "She is not a black, she is a Lestrange, and she is smart as a whip, so she is Ravenclaw bound," Rabastan said. Your sister Andromeda was a Ravenclaw, Sirius reminded Bella. I don't have a sister named Andy, and besides she married a Muggle. My daughter is not going to marry any Muggle, Bella shouted. No, of course not, she will marry a good pureblood boy, Rabaston said. A good pureblood Slytherin boy, Bella said. Yes, Cassiopeia Lestrange Goyle, I could see it now, Sirius said naughtily. Bella screamed and started shouting hexes at the wall in between her and Sirius. Sirius laughed heartily. Stop! Rudolphus screamed. You are all out of your minds. There was silence for a minute and Sirius saw the walls of Azkaban returning, but they disappeared again when Rudolphus said, Cassiopeia is not going anywhere, she will be homeschooled. Homeschooled? Rudy, come on, a young girl needs adventure, she needs to go to Hogwarts, Bella said. I know the kind of adventures you got into. My princess is not going anywhere near that school filled with walking sacks of male hormones, Rudolphus said. We met at Hogwarts and had our own adventures, Bella said seductively. Exactly, Rudolphus shouted. Sirius and Rabaston laughed. Well, 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 this is a strange sound in Azkaban, the warden's voice said. Immediately there was a rushing feeling and Sirius looked around at the dirty, dingy prison cell. Prisoner 396, Black, Sirius Orion, you have visitors, the warden said. Visitors? Sirius asked, confused. He never had visitors. Stand to the back of the cell, the warden said, and Sirius moved to comply. The cell door opened and the warden looked in, and there was an odd look in the man's eyes. Sirius frowned slightly when he saw Albus Dumbledore come in, followed by Amelia Bones and then Moony, Sirius said, recognizing the other man. Siri, Peter was spotted. We know Peter is alive and that he was a Death Eater, Remus said. Sirius looked at the warden and said, I told you I was innocent. The warden just shook his head. Amelia cleared her throat and said, Lord Black. Grandpa is dead, Sirius said with a start. For him to be addressed as Lord, it meant his grandfather Arcturus was dead. Rudolphus had told him about his father Orion's death, as the man had died a week before they had been arrested. He wondered about his mother. You didn't know? Amelia asked with shock. Sirius shook his head. Yes, 2 years now, Albus said. Bella started to cry. She had really loved Grandpa Arcturus, as they all called the last Lord Black. Amelia looked at the warden, who just shrugged. Sirius looked at Albus. My mother. Albus sighed. 6 years. Sirius couldn't help the tear that rolled down his cheek. She was a bitch and a shrew, but she was his mother. Amelia was obviously upset, but then said, Lord Black, while the discovery of Pettigrew is important, we are not here to free you, we are here to investigate. Investigate what? I am in here for the murder of a man who you just told me is alive, so what else is there to investigate? Sirius said. Well, the other charges, Amelia said. What other charges? Sirius asked. Weren't you informed of the other charges at your trial? Amelia asked. What trial? I have been in this stinking place since the day after Halloween 1981, I never went on trial, Severus said. Amelia groaned and said, Albus, I am requesting we transfer Sirius to a cell in the ministry until we settle this. Albus nodded. Let's get out of here, Remus said quickly. Yes, so you can tell me all about Harry's adventures, Sirius said as the warden helped escort him out. Remus did not know how he was going to tell Sirius about Harry. The only thing he did know was that he could not mention it in here because Sirius would probably kill Albus for leaving his cub with Petunia. He would then go ballistic when he heard Harry was now the son of Severus Snape. As they passed Bella's cell door, she said, Siri, would you make sure Cassie is okay and tell her, her mummy loves her? Sirius smiled and was going to answer, but the warden said, You insane old hag, your daughter is dead. Bella screamed and sobbed uncontrollably. Sirius ran over and said, The first thing I do, Bella, is go to Paris. We will go to Richelieu's and I will buy her the prettiest green robes I could find. And get her an owl so she could write me and tell me all about the fun she is having at Hogwarts, Bella said. And about all the cute Slytherin boys that I will have to be fighting away, Sirius said, and Bella giggled. The warden shook his head. You should not be encouraging her, she is not of sound mind. Sirius sighed and said, Sometimes, warden, the only light one can find in the darkness is in your head. Remus held Sirius' arm and said, Sirius, come on, forget about them, you have a lot of people who care about you who will be anxious to see you. Sirius pulled his hand away and said, she is family Remus, and for the last 12 years she has been my friend. Friend, do you know what they did, why they are here? Remus asked. Yes, I do. More than you will ever know. I hear their cries and screams every day, Remus. I know why they are here. Now tell me, Remus, why am I in here? Why did you think that I deserved to be here? Sirius asked. You were charged with betraying James and Lily to Voldemort, Albus said softly. We could tell you Sirius was innocent of that crime. Not because we knew Peter was the one who did the crime, but because we know Sirius would have never betrayed James, Rudolphus said. Kill a Slytherin, yes. Accidentally blow up the Ministry and all of London, yes. Break the statues of secrecy by transfiguring Big Ben into a giant teddy bear named Ben, yes. Betray James Potter. No, Rabaston said. We Slytherins may be a lot of things, but the one thing we do is stand by our friends, something you Gryffindors never do. You turn your back on them the first chance you get. In that regard Sirius was a Slytherin, he loved James more than his own brother. If Sirius was their secret keeper, not even Merlin himself would have gotten him to talk, Rudolphus said. Good luck, Siri, and if you see Frank and Alice, tell them we are sorry, Rabaston said. Frank and Alice are permanently damaged, they will never be healed, Albus said. Well, tell the baby Neville we are sorry, Rudolphus said. Tell him his mummy loves him, Bella said and started singing her lullaby. Siri looked at Amelia and indicated he was ready to go. He ignored Remus and walked away. It had been full moon a few days ago, but the moon was still bright and the glade where Wormtail stood was lit up. He watched as the dark shade Voldemort lifted itself from the snake and went to the unconscious taxi driver's body. The body would not last long, but it would last long enough to get out of there. Voldemort was pleased. Peter Pettigrew, where are the others? Malfoy, not, McNair, Crabbe, Goyle. Malfoy cares nothing for you and the others. Well, to be honest, I do not know. I however bring news. The boy Potter has been moved. The world thinks he has gone to America, but he remains in Britain. He is posing as Severus' long-lost son. Severus, lover is an international order. Severus has betrayed you, Pettigrew said. Voldemort nodded. I know. I have some money. I could take you to get some food and a decent night's sleep, Wormtail said. He took out a wand from his pocket. It was the Dark Lord's. The man smiled when he saw it. He was very pleased. I am weak. This body is not magical and would not last more than one night. I need you to get a few things for me, but first I need a body, not something temporary, a real body. Another snake, Wormtail said, pointing to the body of the dead snake. Not a snake, but a snake egg. There is another snake nearby with a nest with 3 eggs. We will need one of the eggs. I will also need a lot of magic and a human sacrifice. Not this body, someone magical, Voldemort said and started walking in the direction of the nest. The Aurors are hunting me. I tried to bring Malfoy's son, he would have been perfect, but that blasted old coot Dumbledore and my former friend Lupin caught onto me, Pettigrew said with a spat. That would be perfect, we could hunt when they come and get one of the bodies. An Auror would have strong magic. This body is already dying, Voldemort said. Can you use me? Pettigrew said in scared voice. You are not magically powerful enough, and if you die then I will have no one. No, I need. Voldemort stopped when he heard a loud roar. He looked up. Dragon. There are no dragons in this area. There was another roar, another dragon. Pettigrew turned. They are here. That is Snape's lover. He is a dragon rider. He is powerful. I sense his power from here. I would not be able to defeat him. Voldemort looked at the snake guarding her nest and then back at Pettigrew. He knew his plan would fail. If he had time he would have taken the snake embryo and used it in a dark magic ritual to form himself a body. The body would be weak, however. He had hoped Pettigrew would have taken him back to England and his home at Riddle Manor until he could perform the ritual to regain his true body. This Auror was too powerful. He would quickly overpower Pettigrew and even himself, even if he got a magical body. There were few wizards with that kind of power. When he was at his full strength perhaps, but certainly not now. He looked at Pettigrew. I have a plan. Malfoy has a book, a diary, Voldemort said. He used it and Potter destroyed it and he killed the basilisk in the chamber, Pettigrew said. Voldemort cursed and said, "The ring is cursed and you will die without the Parseltongue password and the locket you would not get past the Inferi. Bella is still in Azkaban though as a rat you would not be noticed, however she might be mad as a hatter and even if you escape with her, she would not be able to go to Gringotts. Your best bet is the diadem." He spoke more to himself than anything. "I need you to get something for me. It is a diadem. It is like a lady's tiara. It is at Hogwarts, in the room of requirements on the 7th floor. Get it for me. Put on the crown and it will give you further instructions. Keep my wand, you would need it." Voldemort knew that he was sending Pettigrew to his death but it would be worth it. Voldemort was about to say something else but he felt a familiar pulse of magic. There are Death Eaters close, there might still be a chance. This body is too weak, I will greet them in a more worthy form. Pettigrew heard the man scream and saw the dark shade explode out of the body, killing it. The spirit then went into the female snake. The snake hissed and Pettigrew sensed the Dark Lord's presence in the snake. The snake hissed and sent a pulse of magic. Pettigrew felt his dark mark burn and within a minute 6 men appeared. 5 were Death Eaters, one side along apparated with one of the older men. Lucius looked at Wormtail and said, "You dare touch my son, prepare to die, scum." The snake hissed and Lucius sneered at it. To everyone's horror the snake rose up and moved to strike Lucius. One of the men moved and grabbed the snake and wrestled with it. The snake bit into the man's neck and held on. They heard a deep creepy hissing voice from the man's mouth say, "I need sacrifice." Goyle. Walden McNair asked confused. "Need willing sacrifice," Voldemort said from Goyle's mouth. "Use Pettigrew." Lucius spat knowing it was the Dark Lord. "Pettigrew is to live," Voldemort said. "Use the McNair brat, my lord, isn't that why he is here?" "It should have been Draco but he is not here," Pettigrew said smirking. Walden McNair looked at his son Wilbur and said, "It would be his honor." "You may have him as your sacrifice, my lord." "What, no?" Wilbur said shaking his head. "You will do as I command. This is why you live, to serve him." "It is a great honor," Walden said. "Why don't you sacrifice yourself?" Wilbur said scared. He was looking at the huge snake attached to Goyle's neck, which was controlling him like a puppet. Walden slapped the boy and said, "Do it or die. I have no use for a son who is not willing to serve my master." Wilbur looked terrified. Walden held his son and turned him to the creature. "He is young, strong and full of magic, he has been bred to serve you. He will be a perfect sacrifice." Wilbur looked at Lucius, Thaddeus Knott and Crabbe, his eyes pleading. Knott lowered his eyes not wanting to look. Crabbe only stared at his friend who was being controlled by the snake and Lucius was looking at Pettigrew in hatred. The snake removed itself from Goyle's body and the body fell to the ground. It was convulsing and frothing at the mouth. The snake moved towards Wilbur who was shaking his head. "Please, Uncle Lucius, I don't want to," Wilbur screamed as the large snake came closer. He tried to escape but his father held him firm. "Oh, stop sniveling. What did you think you would be doing? You heard your father, you were groomed for this, just like Thaddeus, son Theodore and Lucius son Draco. It was supposed to be Draco's honor but you got it instead. Now be the man you were born to be and sacrifice your soul to the darkness," Pettigrew said laughing. As if hearing their sons' names jolted them out of their state, the two men looked at Pettigrew and then at the snake approaching the frightened young man. Almost as if planned, both Thaddeus and Lucius drew their wands and attacked. Lucius sent his wand at the snake and Thaddeus at Walden. The snake was faster than Lucius anticipated and would have gotten him but a strong red shield protected him. Lucius looked around and saw Severus' lover Alex and another man who looked like an older version of him. Mad-Eye Moody and what looked like unspeakables came running over. The snake hissed and tried to flee but the two griffins went after it. The younger one took out a sword and ran towards it and the older was sending wandless pulses of magic. Mad-Eye helped Thaddeus and fought Walden who screamed and called his son and Lucius and Thaddeus blood traitors. Crabbe seemed oblivious to the others and kept holding Goyle's convulsing body. The 4 Death Eaters then held their arms and screamed. As Walden's shield stopped, Mad-Eye's curse hit him and he fell. Mad-Eye looked at the Death Eaters and then over to where the 2 griffins were. Alex had chopped off the snake's head and he stood over the flaying headless body, his bloody sword still in his hand, his wand was in the other. The older Griffin had his hands up and there was a dark spectral form hovering a few feet in the air. It was surrounded by what looked like a dragon Patronus. The two men started chanting in a strange language and the spectral form screamed and hissed angrily. There was a large pulse of magic from the two men and the dragon Patronus roared and the dark spirit screamed and it exploded. Lucius, Thaddeus and Crabbe screamed. Goyle arched his back and then collapsed dead. Walden's body also started to convulse, his wounds ripped out more and the blood poured out faster. Wilbur ran to his father and tried using his own cloak to stop the blood. Soon they stopped. Two unspeakables appeared and one went to Walden and started working on him. The other checked Goyle and said he was dead. Crabbe screamed and wept. Thaddeus put his hand on Crabbe's shoulder but the man seemed inconsolable. Alex and Aiden came over and Alex tossed the head of the snake on the ground near to Mad Eye. Is that why you all had Harry Potter living like a South * Avenue to sacrifice himself for? It took less than 3 hours to find him and less than 10 minutes to kill. He is not dead, Lucius said looking at his arm. Thaddeus looked at his arm. The mark is gone. He is dead. That was the Dark Lord they killed. He is dead. Lucius continued looking at his arm. The mark is gone but I feel it still. There is a slight itchy feeling under the skin. I still feel it. Maybe it is a lingering residue of the darkness, Fisher said. Maybe, Thaddeus said. Lucius shook his head. Somehow somewhere he still exists. He had known of the diary and suspected there were others. Maybe, however he is no longer a threat, Alex said. A high elf came in and said in English, there is a dead body of a human about 200 meters to the north, there is another dead snake and a nest with 2 eggs. We have killed 15 vampires and 2 trolls and even a boar but no rats, Arthur said coming in with a blood sword himself. Lucius looked around and said, damn it, Pettigrew is gone. To be continue. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.